Chapter 148. Under Wang Yongjun and Yang Kaiken's guidance, I arrived at the special care ward where Lin Yuetong was staying. This ward was located in the hospital's backyard. In front of the building, there were rockery, running water, and a lot of flowers and plants. As soon as I entered, I could smell the fresh air. In the center of the city, to have such a beautiful ward, the hospital's expenses were certainly not low. Correspondingly, if you wanted to stay here, the cost would be frighteningly high. I asked doubtfully. Lin Yuetong's parents are both dead. How could she afford such an expensive ward? Before Wang Yongjun could speak, Yang Kaichen answered me first. Isn't it because Chief Wang felt sorry for this young girl, so he specially let her stay in his own ward? After his explanation, I understood that this ward was more luxurious than I had imagined. It simply didn't accept ordinary people. The wards here were reserved in advance by some rich and powerful officials, and each ward was only responsible for one patient. When these rich and powerful people needed to be hospitalized, they would stay in their own ward. After they were discharged, the hospital would always keep this ward. It was equivalent to these people buying a long-term ward in the hospital. Not only that, but each ward also had a doctor in charge. This doctor's job was to provide medical advice to the rich and powerful people in their wards, such as diet and living habits. If these rich and powerful people were hospitalized, these doctors would stay in the ward for 24 hours to ensure that their illness wouldn't be delayed. Of course, in addition to the doctors, there would also be several assistant nurses in each ward. Just like the doctors, these nurses were only responsible for one ward. Yang Kaiken's words stunned me. I knew that these rich and powerful people lived extravagantly, but I didn't expect that they could live extravagantly to such an extent. It was simply inconceivable. I'm afraid that the price of such a ward was comparable to the price of a luxury house in the market center. However, even with such a price, these rich and powerful people would still feel that it was worth it. After becoming rich, what people feared the most was death. No matter how much money they spent on their health, they wouldn't even blink. Wang Yongjun was a kind-hearted person. He was unexpectedly willing to let Lin Yuetong use the ward that he used. It must be known that Lin Yuetong was just a classmate of his girlfriend in Nanzhou. She wasn't related to him in any way. For Wang Yongjun to be able to help her to such an extent, I really had nothing to say. In fact, it wasn't just Wang Yongjun. Almost all the rich and powerful people would do this kind of thing. Charity wasn't only to help others, but also to seek peace of mind. As long as they were rich, most of them were willing to spend money to buy peace of mind. Those who were stingy were just an exception. Of course, this only referred to private charitable acts. As for the benefits of the employees of these people's companies, it was a matter of opinion. While chatting, we soon reached the entrance of the hospital building. The door was closed, and 4 security guards in riot suits were standing guard at the entrance. When they saw us, they didn't move an inch. Wang Yongjun stopped in his tracks. He did not go in directly. Instead, he took out his phone and made a call. Not long after, a middle-aged doctor in a white coat appeared at the door. He swiped a card and opened the door. He walked over quickly and greeted Wang Yongjun with a smile on his face. "Mr. Wang, how come you have time to come here today?" Although he had a Chinese face, his Mandarin was a bit stiff. It sounded a bit like a foreigner speaking Mandarin. He was probably an overseas Chinese returnee or something. Wang Yongjun chatted with him for a while. Then, we entered the building and headed to the patient room. On the way, Wang Yongjun introduced us to each other. He said that the doctor was called Lin Bide. His name was neither Chinese nor Western. He graduated from a famous foreign medical school and was now his personal doctor. When I was introduced, Wang Yongjun didn't want to say much. He just smiled and said, "I'm here to treat Lin Yuetong." Who would have thought that Lin Bide wouldn't look happy when he heard that? He stopped and said to Wang Yongjun, "Mr. Wang, I made the final diagnosis for that lady. She's in a brain-dead vegetative state. There's almost no way to cure her. She can only rely on some medical methods to maintain her life. This isn't just my diagnosis. A few days ago, I sent the medical report to my tutor and classmates. The final diagnosis was the same as mine. I was surprised. Why did this guy have such a big reaction? Then, I thought that this guy had some status in the medical world. He thought that Wang Yongjun didn't trust him since he had made the diagnosis and brought someone else to see him. I didn't say anything. Wang Yongjun smiled and tried to smooth things over. That's the diagnosis of a Western doctor. Today, Brother Zhou is a Chinese doctor. If he tries different methods, perhaps there will be an effect. This Western doctor seemed to have been influenced by Western ideas since he was a child, so he was very straightforward. He shook his head and said, "That's impossible. I've studied Chinese medicine a bit. For this lady's illness, Chinese medicine won't have any effect. Moreover, experience is the most important thing in Chinese medicine. This gentleman is so young, so he definitely doesn't have enough experience. I've heard that there are often people in China who pretend to be Chinese doctors to cheat others. Mr. Wang, you shouldn't be fooled. Originally, I didn't care about it. Even if this person expressed hostility towards me, I would still smile. However, at this moment, I felt somewhat uncomfortable. Who would call someone a swindler in front of their face? This was too much. Wang Yongjun looked embarrassed. But since both sides were familiar with each other, he continued to smooth things over. Since you've concluded that there's no way to treat her, let Brother Zhou try. It won't affect anything. Although Dr. Lin Bide didn't look happy, he didn't say anything else. He took us to the patient room. After he entered the room, Lin Yuetong was lying on the big bed in the middle of the room. Her mouth and nose were connected to a ventilator. There were many other instruments next to the bed. All kinds of small tubes were connected to Lin Yuetong's body to monitor her physiological index. I didn't mind them and just lifted my head to look at her forehead. There was a small red dot there. Her forehead was where her soul palace was located. According to my calculations, that small red that was left behind by a method similar to the soul-splitting needle. Besides that, the small red that was surrounded by extremely thick yin energy. However, the strange thing was that the yin energy didn't diffuse and just gathered on her forehead. I glanced at her then, turned to Wang Yongjun. Ask everyone to go out and guard the door. Don't come in. The well ghost was a ferocious creature. I didn't think they would be able to take care of other people. It was safer to ask them to go out. Wang Yongjun and Yang Kaichun understood this. They nodded and prepared to go out. However, Dr. Lin Bide shook his head without hesitation. Absolutely not. This is my patient's room, and I'm responsible for my patients. I can accept the joint consultation of other doctors, but I can't hand the patient over to someone else. Moreover, it's a young doctor like you. I have to watch over you to prevent you from doing anything that could harm my patients. He wore a righteous face, which made me speechless. Wang Yongjun didn't wait for me to get angry. Dr. Lin, this is my decision. I have the final say on who should treat her. If you don't want this job, you can go to the hospital and hand in your resignation. Lin Bai didn't seem to believe Wang Yongjun's words. He kept silent for a while before continuing. Mr. Wang, I'm a doctor who graduated from the best medical university in the world. I have more than 20 years of clinical experience. Why don't you believe me? Why do you trust a young doctor from China? I know that Chinese people are superstitious, but this is a serious medical problem. It's related to a person's life and death. You can't do this. Wang Yongjun's face darkened. He didn't want to talk to him anymore. He picked up his phone and was about to call the hospital staff. At this moment, I stopped him and turned to Dr. Lin Bide with a smile. Mr. Lin Bide, I agree that you're responsible for your patients, but you're wrong about one thing. Chinese medicine isn't superstition. It's also a serious science. I'm asking you to leave because my way of practicing medicine is a little special. How about we make a bet? You said that this lady is brain dead and that there's no way to cure her, right? What if I cure this lady today? Although metaphysics wasn't Chinese medicine, it had many things in common with Chinese medicine. I didn't think that Chinese medicine was better than Western medicine, but I didn't feel comfortable watching a fake foreigner slander Chinese medicine. That was why I decided to tease him. Sure enough, this Lin Bide was straightforward. He scoffed at my words and immediately replied, "That's absolutely impossible. If you can really cure her, then I'll give up on studying Western medicine for 30 years and study Chinese medicine." Dr. Lin, are you serious? Dr. Lin Bide stiffened his neck. As you Chinese people say, I'm a gentleman, and I never go back on my word. What if you can't cure her? I smiled. If you can't cure her, Chief Wang, and I will apologize to you. Chief Wang will also compensate you for the psychological damage. What do you think? Of course, Wang Yongjun trusted me unconditionally. He also knew that I was teasing Dr. Lin. As soon as I finished my sentence, he said, "You can name the amount. As long as I can afford it, I won't go back on my word. What do you think?" Dr. Lin Bide was surprised by Wang Yongjun's confidence. He glanced at Wang Yongjun and nodded firmly. Then, I high-fived him to make an oath. Dr. Lin Bide, who liked to fight, walked out of the room and waited for me to laugh at him. It was strange that he didn't care if he was responsible for the patient's safety or not. After this short interlude ended, all of them left the room. I put away my smile and walked to Lin Yuetong's bed. I took out a talisman and placed it on her forehead. Although I could practice hand seals after reaching the pressure acupoint realm, I was in a hurry and didn't have the time to practice them. I still had to use talismans. This talisman was called the Lost Soul Talisman. It was just an ordinary yellow talisman. Moreover, it had the meaning of an evil technique. If it was used on a person, it would make the person lose their soul and turn them into a fool. However, the Jing ghost was currently entrenched in Lin Yuetong's soul palace. This lost soul talisman could force the ghost out. After I guided the energy, the lost soul talisman turned into ashes. At the same time, a red light appeared on Lin Yuetong's forehead. The red light enlarged, and a ghost that looked like a blood-red woman appeared in front of me. The Jing ghost's clothes were ragged, and most of her body was naked. Her skin emitted a red light, and her two eye sockets looked like they were wrapped in blood. She stared at me. When I saw her, I frowned. It wasn't because of her attire or her eyes. It was because I could vaguely sense an aura similar to Tong Tong's from the well ghost. Tong Tong was a heavenly embryo, and he was born with 3 souls. Moreover, the Jing ghost didn't seem to be afraid of sunlight. Her soul was abnormally full. Rumor had it that when the Jing ghost died, his soul couldn't vanish because of the special structure of the well. However, it didn't mean that the Jing ghost had 3 souls. Among the 3 souls, the heavenly soul was the life soul. When a person died, the heavenly soul would vanish. Only people who died the moment the heavenly soul was born, like Tong Tong, could have a chance to form a heavenly embryo. The Jing ghost was an exception. When he died, his heavenly soul would also vanish. However, because of the special structure of the well, a wisp of his heavenly soul remained. I guess it was because of this that the Jing ghost had an aura similar to Tong Tong's. However, that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that I couldn't see through the Jing ghost's cultivation. With my current acupoint sealing realm, I was at least at the level of a ghost marshal. The Jing ghost cultivation was definitely higher than mine, and I felt that it was much higher. I immediately called Tong Tong out and asked her how high the Jing ghost cultivation was. Tong Tong took a glance, and then told me that the Jing ghost was at the Ghost King level. The Ghost King level was equivalent to a Feng Shui master's cultivation, which was the glory of knowledge realm. My heart immediately sank. Before reaching the acupoint sealing realm, in my eyes, the difference between acupoint sealing and glory of knowledge was only 1 level. However, after reaching the acupoint sealing realm, I finally understood how much energy the 10 acupoints of the Heaven Meridian could store. Now, I only had 1 acupoint cultivation, and the glory of knowledge realm was far more powerful than the 10 acupoints of the complete acupoints. Chapter 149. I looked at the Ghost King realm Jing ghost and gulped. Then I asked Tong Tong, "Tong Tong, what's your cultivation base now?" Tong Tong seemed to be very interested in the Jing ghost. She looked as though she wanted to go and greet her. When she heard my question, she answered casually, "When that man asked me that last time, didn't you know that I have the power of a ghost marshal?" I tried to recall and remembered that when I was searched by the Metaphysics Union, the old man who raised ghosts had asked me that question. At that time, I just thought that Tong Tong's energy was stronger than my Tao energy, so I casually guessed that she had the power of a ghost marshal. I didn't expect that I would be right. However, one of us had the acupressure realm, while the other had the ghost marshal realm. Obviously, We weren't a match for the Jing ghost. What I could rely on the most were the spirits in the jade bracelet. If we were facing the Metaphysics Union's knowledge glory expert, those ghosts could stop us for a while. It wouldn't be a problem for us to run away. However, they were useless against the Jing ghost. While I was hesitating, the Jing ghost looked impatient. Her blood-red lips moved slightly, and she spat out the word die. Then, her body shook and she stormed toward me. As the Jing ghost moved, a gust of cold wind arose. It was so strong that it blew away all the items in the room. In just a blink of an eye, the room was a mess. I was lucky that I had asked Wang Yongjun and the others to leave first. Otherwise, this gust of cold wind would have hurt them badly. I didn't dare to underestimate the Ghost King's attack. I hurried to take out the only defensive magic tool I had, the Square Sky Fan. At this moment, I had enough Tao energy. This was the first time I had proactively urged the Square Sky Fan. In just a blink of an eye, the lonely grave appeared in the room again. The Jing ghost, who was dashing toward me, slowed down. When she reached the grave, she was walking. Moreover, she wasn't walking in a straight line anymore. Instead, she was circling around the grave. This situation looked like a person encountering a ghost hitting a wall. It was normal for a person to encounter a ghost hitting a wall, but it was strange when the Jing ghost started to hit a wall. No matter what, the Square Sky Fan had easily blocked Jing Gui's first wave of attack. However, I didn't have the time to be happy. Soon, I realized that something was wrong. Although the Square Sky Fan has the ability to automatically protect its owner under my active activation, it kept absorbing my chi of the way at an extremely fast rate. I only have one acupoint of cultivation, and half of the Tao Qi in the first acupoint of the Heaven Meridian has disappeared in a short period of time. At this rate, I won't be able to hold on much longer. After thinking for a while, I took out the jade bracelet and began to absorb the dragon vein Qi inside to replenish my Tao Qi. Unfortunately, although the dragon vein could replenish my Tao Qi quickly, it couldn't compare to the speed at which my Tao Qi was being consumed. At most, I could only hold on for a few more minutes. I had to think of another way. There are many hand seals recorded in the death scripture. Among them, there's a hand seal that specializes in restraining ghosts. It's relatively simple, and I've dabbled in it before. Now, I can barely use it. This seal was known as the Earth Overturning Seal. Een spirits came from the earth, and the Earth Overturning Seal was the bane of Een spirits. However, the difference in cultivation between me and the Jing ghost was too great. It was hard to say what effect it would have in the end. At this moment, I had no other choice. I didn't have time to think about it, and quickly chanted the purifying heart mantra. After my mind had calmed down, I began to form hand seals with both hands. Forming hand seals was similar to making talismans. One's mind had to enter an ethereal state, and both hands contained Tao Qi. With continuous movements, the trajectory of the Tao Qi gradually condensed into a mysterious pattern. Then, it slowly separated from the hands and formed a huge Tao Qi light seal at the tip of my fingers. The hand seal technique also consumed Tao Qi, and it consumed a lot of it. Just as the light seal was about to form, the Tao Qi that I had sent into the Square Sky Fan was only left with a tiny bit. The Jing ghost, who was spinning around the lone grave, suddenly raised his head. He opened his blood-red lips and let out a shrill scream. Then, he tore the air with both hands. The lone grave and wild grass pattern that the Square Sky Fan had formed was like a curtain that was torn apart by the Jing ghost. The lone grave collapsed, and the wild grass was broken. The Square Sky Fan returned to its original form, and the light on it became extremely dim. The Jing ghost's speed suddenly increased, and he pounced at me again. Fortunately, the Earth Overturning Seal in my hand had already formed. The huge light seal suddenly flew up according to my thoughts, and smashed directly at the Jing ghost below. The Earth Overturning Seal, which was completely made of Tao Qi, smashed into the Jing ghost's forehead with supreme power. The Jing ghost was extremely fierce, and he didn't care at all. He even raised his head and violently collided with the Earth Overturning Seal. Both of them were made of incorporeal bodies. When they collided, there was no sound. After the collision, The earth overturning seal, which was made of Dao Qi, collapsed and dissipated. The Jing Ghost's head was also char black, and there was even a small part of it missing. Only half of his head was left. He didn't slow down at all, and he continued to pounce at me. At that moment, I was already exhausted. Tong Tong, who was already prepared, moved her hands, and from the tips of her middle fingers, 2 wisps of black energy suddenly emerged. The black energy was very pure and thick, like 2 thin black snakes that slithered towards the Jing Ghost. The momentum of the 2 wisps of black energy wasn't as vast as the earth overturning seal, but the Jing Ghost's expression was much more solemn. He didn't dare to use his body to resist, and instead used his blood-red hands to grab the black energy. The speed of the black energy wasn't fast, so it was easy for the Jing Ghost to grab it. However, just as her hands touched the black energy, the end of the black energy suddenly rose up. In a split second, its speed increased, and it directly tied up the Jing Ghost's hands. After tying them up, the 2 wisps of black energy continuously tightened, binding the Jing Ghost's hands tightly together. Although the ward was big, it was just a room. At that moment, the Jing Ghost was less than a meter away from me. The thick red light around her made me squint. However, under the effect of the 2 wisps of black energy, she had to stop temporarily. The Jing Ghost screeched again, and his hands fiercely pulled. However, no matter how hard he pulled, he couldn't get rid of the 2 wisps of black energy in her eyes. Now that I had a chance to catch my breath, I didn't have time to retreat. I held the jade bracelet in my hand and quickly absorbed the dragon energy from it to replenish my energy. Although the earth overturning seal had been blocked by the Jing Ghost, looking at the injury on her head, the earth overturning seal was definitely useful. As long as I recover my energy, I could use the earth overturning seal a few more times, and the Jing Ghost wouldn't be able to withstand it. While I was recovering, I turned to look at Tong Tong. Her small face was pale with a tinge of cyan. Now, it was completely pale, and her body had dimmed. It was obvious that the 2 wisps of black energy were a huge burden to her. When my energy was about to recover to the point where I could use the earth overturning seal again, the Jing Ghost suddenly stopped struggling. Instead, 2 streaks of blood flowed out of her blood-red eyes. The blood tears didn't roll down her face, but directly fell on the 2 wisps of black energy that were wrapped around her wrists. Then, like acid falling on a wooden board, the 2 wisps of black energy in her eyes suddenly emitted thick white smoke. Then, the 2 wisps of black energy dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Moreover, they became thinner and thinner, and it looked like they were about to disappear. Tong Tong suddenly shouted at me, "Brother, hold the jade bracelet in your hand and form a seal. Use the power of the jade bracelet to attack her." At that moment, the energy in my body had just recovered, and I was about to form the earth overturning seal again. Hearing Tong Tong shout, I suddenly recalled the time when I first faced the flesh-eating baby. I held the jade bracelet in my hand and punched the flesh-eating baby. Tong Tong said to use the power of the jade bracelet. Could it be that the jade bracelet itself had some kind of power? I didn't have time to think about it. After I quickly formed the seal, I held the jade bracelet with both hands and condensed the earth overturning seal formed by my energy on my fist. Then I punched at the Jing Ghost. Just as I made my move, the last wisp of black energy on the Jing Ghost's wrist was finally broken by her. Her blood-red eyes looked up at me again. The moment she raised her head, my fist, along with the earth overturning seal, hit her chest. This time, perhaps because of the power of my fist, a muffled sound came from the Jing Ghost's chest. Then my body trembled violently. My entire body was sent flying by the force of the collision. I hit the wall behind me and slowly fell. Chapter 150. If a human had such a huge hole in their body, they would be dead for sure. However, Jing Gue wasn't a human. The huge hole in her chest only made her pause for a moment. Then, she lifted her head. Her blood-red eyes became even more sinister. She lifted her feet and continued to walk toward me. Tong Tong, who wasn't far from me, saw this. She hurriedly waved her hands. A thin black light curtain appeared in front of me, separating me and the Jing ghost. I didn't know why the Jing ghost didn't care about Tong Tong. She just wanted to attack me. Even though Tong Tong had used her Yin energy to create this light curtain, the Jing ghost didn't care about her. She used her hands to tear the curtain. In just a few seconds, she tore a big hole in the black light curtain. Her hands reached toward me. The two wisps of black air had consumed almost all of Tong Tong's Yin energy. At this moment, the light curtain didn't have any effect on the Jing ghost. As the Jing ghost's hand were about to grab my neck, Tong Tong suddenly screamed at me, "Brother, give me the jade bracelet." She must have a reason for saying that. I wanted to throw the jade bracelet to her, but it was too late. The Jing ghost's hands had reached my neck. The ghost devours my soul. It might devour my soul in the next second. At this moment, I only had a wisp of Tao energy left in my body. It wasn't enough to support me to make the hand seal. The dark green energy was still in the 4 meridians on the other side. However, after reaching the acupoint pressing realm, the dark green energy couldn't be combined with Tao energy. Without the support of Tao energy, the dark green energy was just a wisp. Although it had been flowing in the 4 meridians for 2 days, it had only increased a little. The meridians where the dark green energy was located were 4 complete meridians, which had 5 more acupoints than meridians where the Qi of the Way was located. However, the base of this energy was too small. Up until now, all the dark green energy added up was not even as much as the Qi of the Way that I had left. Even when I used the talisman to guide the Qi of the Way, it was completely useless. In this critical situation, I read the golden light, divine incantation loudly. At the same time, I gathered the last wisp of Tao energy in my body to trigger a golden light, divine talisman on my body. The Heaven and Earth mysterious sect is the root of all energies, cultivating 100 million tribulations to prove my supernatural powers. In the 3 worlds, the Tao is the only ruler. Golden light shone on my body. See not see, hear not hear, encompassing the heavens and earth, nurturing all life. Recite it 10,000 times, and your body will be illuminated. The guards of the 3 realms and the 5 emperors were there to welcome them. The worship of 10,000 deities controlling lightning. The ghosts and demons were frightened, and the spirits and monsters lost their forms. There were thunderbolts inside. The name of the thunder god was hidden. Profound insight and wisdom intertwined. 5 Qi surged. Quickly appear with the golden light. Protect Jinren. Back when I was in the dragon-seeking realm, when I used the divine golden light incantation, I could only say protect my body. But now that I have reached the acupoint realm, I can already say protect the true person as a conclusion. Compared to before, the power of the incantation is much greater. The divine golden light incantation was a great incantation that could be made into talismans, hand seals, and even steps and incantations to complement it. I had dabbled in the hand seal method, but this hand seal was too complicated. I couldn't grasp it in a short time. At this moment, I could only chant the incantation. Together with the divine golden light talisman that I had made earlier, a dazzling golden ring appeared outside my body, covering my entire body. It even pushed Jing Gui's hands, which were grabbing my neck, to the side. Taking a breather, I hurriedly threw the jade bracelet in my hand to Tong Tong, who wasn't far from me. At the same time, Jing Gui seemed to be enraged. She hissed and opened her big mouth, directly biting the golden light that was protecting my body. With a sharp grinding sound, Jing Gui actually used her mouth to bite off a piece of the golden light. In an instant, not only was there a piece of empty space where she had bitten, even the golden light in other parts of the space had dimmed a lot. My body was also hit hard, and I spurted another mouthful of blood. Then, Jing Gui didn't hesitate at all and continued to bite down. After the second bite, only a thin layer of the golden light was left. If Jing Gui took another bite, the golden light would collapse. However, Right at this moment, the light in the room suddenly dimmed. It was as if the sky had changed from noon to dusk. Jingui opened her mouth and was about to continue biting the golden light, but suddenly she seemed to notice something and didn't continue to bite down. Instead, she retreated and returned to her original position on the bed in an instant. Right after that, I heard Tong Tong's voice. She seemed to be chanting some incantation, but it didn't seem to be made of Chinese characters. Her tone was strange, and it carried a desolate and sorrowful feeling. Besides that, Tong Tong's voice seemed to have changed. It wasn't as clear and melodious as before. It had become deep and hoarse. It sounded like she was a completely different person. I struggled to raise my head and look in front of me. Tong Tong, who had been standing not far from me, had his eyes tightly closed. His right hand was holding the jade bracelet high in the air. From head to toe, only his mouth was continuously chanting. What was even more strange was that as she chanted the incantation, her body slowly floated up into the air. Although Ein's souls were light, they didn't have the ability to fly. That was a supernatural power that only Ein's spirits could have at the ghost immortal realm. Why did Tong suddenly fly up? Before I could figure out, Tong Tong's chanting became softer and softer. When she finished the last syllable, the small jade bracelet suddenly shot out thick black smoke. At first, it was just a thin wisp. However, as it shot out, it became thicker and thicker. In just the blink of an eye, it had reached Jingui. At this moment, the black smoke had become as thick as a giant python. It had almost shrouded Jingui's entire body. Tong and I couldn't deal with the terrifying Jingui. But now, she seemed to have encountered the most terrifying thing. She didn't even have the courage to resist. Her body flew backward so fast that she turned into a blood-red afterimage. Unfortunately, everything she had done was useless. The black smoke was much faster than her. In just the blink of an eye, the python-like black smoke had caught up to her. This time, it didn't coil around her. Instead, it directly shrouded her entire body. At this time, the black gas finally stopped, rolling and surging on the spot. In the beginning, one could still hear the shrill scream of the Jing ghost, and a trace of blood shadow could be vaguely seen in the black gas. But slowly, the shrill scream became smaller and smaller until it couldn't be heard anymore. A few minutes later, the black smoke vanished at the same speed as it had appeared. In just a blink of an eye, it returned to the jade bracelet in Tong Tong's hand. The empty space where the black gas had been surging was now empty. The Jing ghost had disappeared along with the black gas. Tong didn't open her eyes in the air, but she was falling. When she was about to hit the ground, her body flashed and disappeared into the jade bracelet. I hurried to disperse the gold light on my body. Enduring the pain, I walked to pick up the jade bracelet on the ground and called Tong Tong's name. After calling her name a few times, Tong Tong's feeble voice resounded in my head. "Brother, the heavenly Ein energy in my body has been consumed. I'm about to fall asleep. It will take some time before I wake up." After saying that, Tong Tong's voice disappeared. No matter how hard I called her, she didn't come back. I didn't know what the heavenly Ein energy she had mentioned was. However, since she had returned to the jade bracelet and had the strength to tell me that she was about to fall asleep, her situation shouldn't be too serious. I couldn't see the situation inside the jade bracelet, so I could only comfort myself. I staggered to the bedside and sat down. Holding the jade bracelet in my hand, I closed my eyes and began to absorb the energy from the jade bracelet. The dragon energy in the true dragon's vein was endless. After I had absorbed enough energy, I guided the energy to quickly circulate in my meridians. Around 2 hours later, the energy in my meridians had completed a complete cycle. I had recovered more than half of my strength. Under the nourishment of the energy, the wounds on my body were completely suppressed. I didn't feel any pain anymore. At this moment, I finally had the strength to check on Lin Yuedong, who was lying on the bed. After I had taken the Jing ghost out of her soul palace, her condition had improved a lot. I tried to take the ventilator off her mouth and reached out my hand to check. She could still breathe smoothly. However, she still hadn't woken up. After thinking for a while, I placed my hand on her forehead to sense. I found that her soul was intact and hadn't been swallowed by the well ghost. However, it was strange that her soul seemed to be in a separate state. The three souls hadn't gathered together yet. It was probably because of this that she was still unconscious. The separation of the soul wasn't a big problem because a person's soul had the innate ability to stick together. Moreover, the energy in the body also had the ability to nourish the soul. Next, I sat at the head of her bed and circulated my spiritual energy to recover my Tao Qi. At the same time, I transferred a portion of my Tao Qi into her soul palace to help her slowly nurture her three souls so that they could slowly stick together again. About 2 hours later, the energy in my body had been completely restored, and Lin Yuedong's three souls had finally returned to the standard of a normal person. Although she still hadn't opened her eyes, she wasn't in a coma anymore. She was in a deep sleep under the nourishment of the energy. Next, I went to open the door and called Wang Yongjun and the others to come in. As soon as I entered the room, Wang Yongjun and Yang Kaichen asked me anxiously, "Just now, we heard the sound of collisions coming from inside. What happened? Was it the Jing ghost?" I didn't explain much to them. I just smiled and said, "There is a small problem, but it has been solved." Before Wang Yongjun could speak, Lin Bide, who was standing on the side, suddenly said, "Solved? You said that you would cure this lady. Now you just made a mess in the room, and the lady is still in a coma. You haven't solved the problem at all. Now I just want to ask you, does our bet still count?" Originally, I just wanted to tease him, so I didn't take the initiative to mention it. I didn't expect him to be the first to ask. I smiled at him and asked, "Are you sure that our bet still counts?" Lin Bide quickly nodded. After glancing at Wang Yongjun, he gritted his teeth and said, "A gentleman keeps his word. This is an idiom of you Chinese people. You must abide by it." Chapter 151. I gently clapped my hands and sent a wisp of Tao energy into Lin Yuedong's body. Her quiet body suddenly shivered. Then, she slowly opened her eyes. "It's impossible. How could it be?" Dr. Lin Bide, who had been sneering a moment ago, suddenly opened his eyes wide. His face was filled with disbelief. He stammered and couldn't utter a word. I turned around and smiled at him. "Now that you've woken up, Dr. Lin, it seems you're going to study Chinese medicine." After hearing my words, Dr. Lin Bide still hadn't recovered from his shock. He pointed at me and shouted, "That's impossible. This isn't medicine. It's sorcery. It's definitely sorcery." Strictly speaking, he wasn't wrong. What I was doing wasn't medicine. It was metaphysics. However, if metaphysics was used to save people, why couldn't it be called medicine? Moreover, metaphysics and Chinese medicine were of the same origin, so they had their own similarities. It wasn't too much to call them Chinese medicine. Before I could say anything, Wang Yongjun opened his mouth with a cold face. "Dr. Lin, you just used a Chinese idiom to make a bet. Now, I'll tell you another idiom. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for not being reasonable with you." As Wang Yongjun's private doctor, of course, Dr. Lin Bide knew Wang Yongjun's power. He kept silent for a while, then nodded. "All right, I admit that I lost. From now on, I'll go and find some basic Chinese medicine teaching materials. I'll start to study Chinese medicine." I couldn't help but laugh. This fellow had been showing off his Western education, but now he knew how to beat around the bush and avoid the important points. I didn't need to say anything as Wang Yongjun knew what he was thinking. He said bluntly, "Dr. Lin, you said that you want to give up Western medicine and study Chinese medicine. If that's the case, you can't be my private doctor for the time being. I'll explain the situation to the hospital and ask for a new doctor. That way, after Dr. Lin leaves, you can focus on studying Chinese medicine." I smiled at him. Then, I wished Dr. Lin good luck in learning Chinese and Western medicine in advance. Hopefully, you'll be able to achieve something in Chinese medicine. Lin Bide's face slowly darkened. After a moment of silence, he reluctantly nodded at us and turned around to leave. After he left, Wang Yongjun suddenly called his driver over and instructed him, "Get someone to keep an eye on this person. If he gives up Western medicine and starts to learn Chinese medicine as promised, then forget it. If he doesn't do that, think of a way to create a major medical accident so that he can't stay in the medical circle anymore. This, I frowned and said to Wang Yongjun, it doesn't seem appropriate, right? Wang Yongjun's expression was originally gloomy, but when he turned to look at me, he immediately put on a smile and explained, Brother Zhou, you're too kind. You don't need to be polite to this kind of person. If he doesn't keep his promise, then I can only help him keep his promise. I kept silent for a while. In the end, I didn't say anything. Lin Bide had brought this upon himself. He didn't deserve any sympathy. I turned my head to look at Lin Yuetong, who was lying on the hospital bed. I smiled and asked her, how do you feel now? Lin Yuetong's eyes were still bewildered. When she heard my question, she took a while to compose herself. Then, she slowly said, I feel a little dizzy. How are my parents' bodies? According to what Yang Kai-chun had told me, not long after Lin Yuetong saw her parents' bodies, she was possessed by the well ghost and fainted. Of course, she was worried about them. However, I didn't know the answer to this question, so I could only turn to look at Yang Kai-chun. Yang Kai-chun awkwardly lowered his head and said, At that time, we encountered a dangerous situation. We had to run for our lives. Your parents' bodies are still there. Lin Yuetong didn't mind. After asking that question, she lay on the bed again, looking at the ceiling with dull eyes. Her three souls had been separated for a long time, so it was natural that she would suffer some damage. Although I had used my Tao energy to help her recover, Lin Yuetong would remain in this absent-minded state for a long time. However, at this moment, I didn't have time to care about her mental state. There were some questions I had to ask her. When did you get this little red dot on your forehead? Lin Yuetong thought for a while, then said, I heard from my mother that it was when I was in a coma for the first time when I was young. I nodded and asked, since you were young, every time you woke up after being in a coma, did you feel the same way as you do now? Lin Yuetong nodded. With these two simple questions and the information I had gotten from Yang Kai-chun and Lin Yuetong, I had more or less figured out the ins and outs of this matter. The reason why Lin Yuetong barked like a dog and fell into a coma wasn't what I had thought. She had been affected by the resentful energy of the dog soul when she was in her mother's womb. All of this was caused by humans, or rather by ghosts. When I first met the well ghost, I felt an aura that was similar to Tong Tong's. At that time, I thought that the well ghost was born with a bit of heavenly soul, but now that I thought about it, it wasn't the case at all. Because of the special structure of the well ghost was born with a bit of heavenly soul aura. However, it was still worlds apart from the aura of a heavenly fetus like Tong Tong. To ghosts, a heavenly fetus was like a top-notch four-meridian talent in the metaphysics world. It was something that every ghost wanted to have. However, ghosts were formed after people died. When they were born, the heavenly soul would completely disappear. It was impossible to form a ghost with three souls. But among all the ghosts, the well ghost was a special case because it had a bit of the aura of a heavenly soul. Because of this bit of aura, the well ghost had the possibility of becoming a heavenly fetus. Although it was impossible for a person's 8 characters to be exactly the same, there were some that were very similar. There were even some that were slightly different. If the well ghost wanted to become a heavenly fetus, it had to find a person whose fate was only slightly different from its own. Then, it had to occupy her soul palace and slowly fuse the 3 souls of the 2 of them. In the end, it had to use the other person's heavenly soul to make up for its remaining bit of heavenly soul. Then, the well ghost would become a heavenly fetus. Although this probability was higher than that of a heavenly fetus like Tong Tong, it was still very small. No one had ever told me about it. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Although the well ghost that had fought fiercely looked bloody and scary, in reality, at the Ghost King realm, a ghost's intelligence was not inferior to that of humans. Because the well ghost wanted to become a heavenly fetus, it somehow found Lin Yuetong, whose fate was very similar to its own when it was alive. Moreover, Lin Yuetong had been afflicted with a soul-splitting needle since she was a child, causing her 3 souls to separate every once in a while. Then, The Jing ghost would reside in her soul palace during the time when her three souls were separated. He would familiarize himself with and fuse with her three souls, causing her to frequently fall into a coma all these years. As for the reason why she barked like a dog, it was indeed because her soul was contaminated with the resentment of the dog soul. However, it wasn't when she was in her mother's womb, but when her three souls were separated and reunited. Over the years, her mother made her listen to Buddhist scriptures, but couldn't cure her. It could only calm her down a little. In the end, she woke up not because of the Buddhist scriptures, but because the well ghost left on his own. As for what happened to her in college, it was because the well ghost wasn't by her side after her three souls separated. Every time the well ghost fused with her three souls, he would cast a spell to fuse her three souls together before he left. This time, the well ghost didn't enter her soul palace, so he naturally couldn't help her fuse the three souls. However, as I said before, a human's three souls have the instinct to stick together. A person's three souls have the instinct to stick together. After several days of rest, when I went to check, her three souls had automatically stuck together. That was why I didn't notice this problem. Instead, I focused on the resentful energy of the dog soul in her soul. After Tong Tong used his pure heavenly soul to help Lin Yuetong repair her soul, they returned to Guangxi. When the well ghost discovered this change, he immediately entered her soul palace. After so many years, the reason why Jing Gui had to slowly fuse with her heavenly soul time and time again was because there were still some slight differences in their souls. After the pupil erased the resentment of the dog soul and gave her a new soul, Jing Gui used this pure part of the soul to directly remove the differences between the two and completely devour Lin Yuetong's heavenly soul. Then, he filled himself up and became a true heavenly embryo. If I hadn't come back in time, the well ghost might have become a heavenly fetus. This was also the reason why I found a similar aura to Tong Tong's. This method of separating the three souls and slowly fusing them was the orthodox ghost raising technique. The only difference was that in the ghost raising technique, a person raised a little ghost, while Lin Yuetong was raised by a well ghost. It wasn't a person raising a ghost, but a ghost raising a ghost. Lin Yuetong's family situation had been so many years, and she didn't know about the well ghost in her family. However, her parents obviously knew about it. Of the three corpses on the corpse fishing rod, two were her parents, and the other one was a metaphysics expert that her parents had found to solve the problem. Unfortunately, this man wasn't good enough, or he didn't know that the well ghost had the power of a ghost king. In the end, not only did he fail to fish up the well ghost's corpse, but he also got himself killed. In the end, he and Lin Yuetong's parents became the well ghost's food. After understanding this, everything seemed clear. However, there were still two things I didn't understand. First, even if the well ghost had the power of a ghost king, he couldn't use the soul-splitting needle. Only humans could use it. It would stab Lin Yuetong's forehead with the soul-splitting needle. Second, it was very difficult to find a person with a small difference in the 8 characters of their birth. The well ghost didn't have the ability to check the 8 characters of a person's birth. How could he find Lin Yuetong? Was it really a coincidence? Chapter 152. Then, I asked Lin Yuetong a few more questions. However, she didn't know anything about the well ghost, let alone the others. Feeling helpless, I had to give up. I gave her a soul-soothing talisman and left her room. I returned to the hotel to rest. Since returning from a metaphysical union, I hadn't had time to catch my breath because of Lin Yuetong. Now I could finally rest. I slept for a dozen or so hours. After I got up, I packed my luggage and took out the Mount Tai seal that I had gotten from Lu Jinyang. Lu Jinyang had told me that the Mount Tai seal was one of the 7 inherited magical tools of the Lu family. Although it wasn't as precious as a heavenly master's magical tool, it was still an inherited magical tool. When Lu Jinyang had it, it hadn't been able to display its true power. My cultivation base was higher than Lu Jinyang's, and now that I had reached the first acupoint sealing realm, what kind of power would this Mount Tai seal have? Excited, I slowly poured my Tao energy into the white Mount Tai seal. However, I was disappointed. The light of the Mount Tai seal only flashed a few times. Then it calmed down. Afterward, no matter how much I poured my Tao energy into it, it didn't react. Why is it like this? I couldn't figure it out. I closed my eyes and used my Tao energy to sense for a long time. Then, I found a complicated pattern carved on the bottom of the Mount Tai seal. My Tao energy didn't enter the Mount Tai seal after passing through this pattern. Instead, it scattered in the air. Since my Tao energy couldn't enter the magical tool, it couldn't activate its power. My interest was piqued. This complicated pattern was a geomancy formation that could distinguish Tao energy. It could distinguish the Tao energy of the Liu family's members and the others. There were many kinds of geomancy formations in the death scripture, but I had never seen this one before. After studying it for a long time, I didn't have any clue. I had to put this matter aside and wait until I had time to solve this formation. After putting the Mount Tai seal away, I found that I had nothing to do. I sat there and organized my experiences in the past few days. I found that there were two things I needed to do. One was to find the traces of the fat father and son. The other thing was to look for the snake spirit in Miaojiang. The matter with the snake spirit wasn't just because of my feelings for the snake spirit, but also because the red shadow's black dragon Qilin knot might have something to do with the snake spirit. I had to find it as soon as possible to find the answer to the mystery. But unfortunately, that old goo woman's strength is probably above the glory of consciousness realm. If I were to find her with my current strength, it would be like striking a rock with an egg. I wouldn't be able to achieve my goal at all. Therefore, this matter could only be put aside for the time being. The fatty and his father's whereabouts were also troublesome. A few days ago, I tried to call the fatty, but just like before, I couldn't get through to him. Recently, when I tried to call him, his number was no longer in use. Now, I could only think about when I should go to Kaifeng again. In the past, I heard from him that he was a disciple of a famous Taoist sect in Kaifeng. Their master was Zhenren Guan, a master of divination. If Fatty came out of the Fire God Temple, he might return to his sect. After making a decision in my heart, I decided to rest for around half a month before going home. After the new year, I would go to Kaifeng to look for Zhenren Guan. In the following half a month, I declined several invitations from the Shenzhen branch's celebration activities and stayed in the hotel alone to slowly nurture my Tao energy. Since I had the apex Four Meridians talent, my cultivation speed was much faster than ordinary people. In just a dozen or so days, the second acupoint in my heaven meridian had accumulated about 10% of the Tao energy. This 10% didn't sound like much, but if it was someone else, let alone 10%, it would be difficult for them to even reach 5%. The only thing that made me depressed was the dark green energy. After so many days, it was still half dead. Although it had increased, the rate of increase was really not worth mentioning. It was almost impossible to notice. Back then, the dark green energy had opened up 4 complete meridians. It was much stronger than the chi of the way. Now it had become like this. Not only could it not fuse with the chi of the way to increase my strength, but even the speed at which it was growing had become so slow. I really didn't know what to do. I also thought of continuing to absorb energy from the black bead, but the black bead's energy was used to conceal the true dragon's vein. The aura of the true dragon's vein was too strong. If it wasn't concealed, it would be like a moving sun. As long as I exposed it, the people from the Metaphysics Association would find me in a few minutes. No matter what, I couldn't take the risk, so I could only give up. After half a month, just as I was about to leave Shenzhen, Yang Kaichen suddenly came to find me. I thought that the Metaphysics Association had asked him to invite me to participate in some activity. Without waiting for him to say anything, I told him that I was preparing to return home. No matter what activity it was, I wouldn't be able to participate. Who knew that Yang Kaichen would anxiously wave his hand at me and say, "It's not an activity. Something happened at the Metaphysics Association. You have to go there this time." I felt strange. Even if something happened at the Metaphysics Association, what did it have to do with me? After asking him in puzzlement, Yang Kaichen sighed and said, "Isn't it because of Lin Yuetong's matter?" After you killed the Jinggue, the mastermind behind it came looking for you. I was stunned at first, then I couldn't help but sneer. I had my suspicions at that time, but now it seems that someone is really controlling it. This person has guts. After doing such a heinous thing, he still dares to come looking for the Metaphysics Association. Could it be that this person is an important figure in the Metaphysics Association? Yang Kaichen shook his head. It's not someone from the Metaphysics Association. It's not? Then why did the people from the Metaphysics Association come looking for me? Could it be an important figure from the Taoist or Buddhist sects? Yang Kaichun continued to shake his head. I was even more puzzled. In the entire metaphysics world, besides the important figures from these three sects, who else would dare to take the initiative to come looking for me after doing something bad? Even the old witch from last time wouldn't be able to do it. Forcing President Su was one thing, but forcing the entire Metaphysics Association was another. If it wasn't one of these three sects, could it be Celestial Master Zhang from Mount Longhu? After asking again, Yang Kaichun gave me an unimaginable answer. He forced a smile and said, "It's someone from Hong Kong." I was bewildered. How could this matter be related to someone from Hong Kong? After listening to Yang Kaiken's detailed explanation, I finally understood what was going on. In the early years, Hong Kong was under the control of the British government. Although the Hong Kong British government had carried out a campaign to eliminate the Chinese language, the traditional culture in Hong Kong was well preserved, especially in the area of metaphysics. This could be seen from the movies that were popular in Hong Kong in the early years. It was strange that when the Hong Kong British government carried out the campaign to eliminate the Chinese language, the older generation of Hong Kong people swore to resist. They were persecuted many times, but they didn't lower their heads. They just wanted to pass on the culture that was related to their bloodline. But now, after Hong Kong's return, many of the new generation of Hong Kong people denied their bloodline and refused to learn their own culture. It was really strange. Let's put this matter aside for now. Although Hong Kong's metaphysics culture was good, due to its geographical location, there weren't many orthodox metaphysics techniques that had been passed down from the Central Plains. 100 years ago, during the chaotic period of China, some evil Taoist sects were expelled from the Central Plains. Many of them fled to Hong Kong and Nanyang, which gave birth to many ghost-raising and corpse-raising sections. Later on, Kuomintang, Tame Head Magic, Amulet, Spirit Ghosts, and many other metaphysics sects with strong regional auras emerged. Now, they were called the Nanyang Taoist sects. Hong Kong was the connecting point between China and Nanyang, and it was also the core area of the Nanyang Taoist sects. Traces of Nanyang Taoist techniques could be found here. Among them, the ghost-raising sect was the most powerful one. This time, it was an elder of the ghost-raising sect. However, he didn't come here himself. He had contacted the Guangdong government through a high-ranking official of the Hong Kong government. The Hong Kong metaphysics community had a high status, and they had a close relationship with the government. It wasn't strange that this elder could find a high-ranking official. After the Guangdong government got the news, they quickly contacted the Metaphysics Society. That was why Yang Kaichen was so worried. Due to the Metaphysics Society's special nature, the government had always taken care of them. For example, the deathmatch I had with Lu Jinyang, Han Wennan, and the others in the Metaphysics Society was beyond the law. However, in today's society, nothing was above the law. After the government intervened, this matter became a big deal. So, according to Yang Kai-chun, I had to go to the Shenzhen branch to see the elder of the ghost-raising sect. After understanding the situation, I had to postpone my plan to go home and go with Yang Kai-chun to the Shenzhen branch. When I arrived, President Su was waiting for me with a sinister old man who looked around 50 years old. He was wearing a traditional Tang suit. There was no need to introduce him. This old man was the ghost-raising sect's elder that Yang Kai-chun had mentioned. Before President Su could say anything, the old man opened his mouth. "You're the kid who subdued my well ghost? If you summon my well ghost now, I might spare your life. Otherwise, I will take your 3 souls and refine you into a ghost cultivator." The ghost cultivator he was talking about was the ghost that was formed after the death of a person who had at least reached the earthly adept realm in the metaphysics world. Since the three souls of an earth master were much more vigorous than an ordinary person's, the ghost that was formed after death would also be much more powerful. It was one of the ghosts that many ghost-raising sect members liked to refine. Looking at the old man's arrogant attitude, my expression turned cold. I sneered and said, "You used the well ghost to harm people and didn't care about the rules of the metaphysics world. Now, you still dare to ask me for your evil ghost? It's ridiculous. I have already destroyed the well ghost's 3 souls. After I sent him to the afterlife, he returned to the cycle of reincarnation. If you want to find him, you can go to the netherworld and slowly look for him. Why are you looking for me?" This old man was able to raise a ghost like the well ghost, so his strength wasn't weak. If he had come to find me in private, I might have been a bit afraid. However, I was currently in the Metaphysics Society. As a young phoenix and a peerless 4 Meridians talent, the Metaphysics Society would protect me no matter what. Facing this old man, I naturally didn't have any fear. When the old man heard me, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It seemed he was even angrier than me. He roared. I was careless for a moment and let the well ghost get lost. After that, I searched everywhere and finally got the news. If the well ghost really did something evil, this old man will compensate for it. But you, a junior, are too rude. You actually dared to destroy my well ghost. Today, this old man will take your life." After saying that, he slammed the table and stood up. It seemed that he was about to attack me. Without waiting for me to speak, President Su quickly stood up and blocked the old man. He said, "Elder Liang, our Metaphysics Society still has its rules. Let's sit down and discuss this matter to prevent any unnecessary trouble." His words made my impression towards President Su slightly better. However, the old man immediately said, "I know the rules of the Metaphysics Society. Although our ghost-raising sect didn't join the continent's Metaphysics Society, we are still considered a family. I won't cause any trouble today. Everything will go according to your Metaphysics Society's rules. What do you think?" President Su nodded and smiled. It's naturally for the best that Elder Liang can follow the rules. At this moment, I faintly felt that something wasn't right. One of them had a red face while the other had a white face. Something was definitely wrong. Before I could figure it out, Elder Liang said, "Since it's like this, then according to the Metaphysics Society's rules, I propose to have a life and death duel with this junior." President Su, what do you think? This doesn't go against your Metaphysics Society's rules, right? My mind buzzed. So this was what he was waiting for me. President Su seemed to be in a difficult position. He muttered to himself, "This doesn't go against the rules," but before he could say anything, Elder Liang waved his hand. "Since it doesn't go against the rules, then let's do it this way. There's no need to choose the venue or time. Let's do it here and now. Junior, what do you think?" With that, he turned around and looked at me sinisterly. At this moment, President Su also turned around with an apologetic and helpless expression. He smiled wryly as he tried to persuade me. "Zhou-Yi, since the government has interfered in this matter, the Metaphysics Society can't completely cover up for you. After all, you were in the wrong first. Why don't we follow Elder Liang's suggestion?" I stared at President Su. This shameless person. I already knew that this person had evil intentions in the dark. I just didn't think that he would find an opportunity so quickly. "President Su, aren't you afraid that the headquarters will find trouble with you after this?" I asked word by word. President Su still had an apologetic expression. He sighed and said, "I also have no choice. The government has interfered in this matter. What choice do you want me to make? If the headquarters really wants to blame me, then I can only accept my fate." My heart sank to the bottom. It seemed that President Su was ready to fight to the death. Without waiting for me to speak, President Su stood up and retreated. At the same time, he said, "Elder Liang, the life and death duel can begin at any time." Elder Liang chuckled. He didn't directly walk towards me. Instead, he held a bowl-shaped instrument in his hand and chanted 2 strange incantations. Then, as the cold wind blew around, a figure wearing white gauze suddenly appeared in front of me. The elder of the ghost raising sect naturally used ghosts to fight. However, when I saw this ghost figure, even though I was extremely angry, I still widened my eyes. I almost couldn't believe the scene in front of me, because I've seen this ghost figure before. It was the Li Ying who was buried at the 28 fiendish Yellow Springs formation on the Red Shadow's grave. It was the female corpse that was no different from a living person, the daughter Li Ying who was personally hanged by the old principal. Chapter 153. When I saw Li Ying's ghost, I was so frightened that I couldn't say a word. My mind was filled with thoughts about what had happened in the past. In my memory, the last time I saw Li Ying was when she was lying in that coffin. The Red Shadow took her back to the big stone door. From then on, she disappeared, just like the Red Shadow. Until now, there was no trace of her. Although Red Shadow had contacted me through Sheikah on the handkerchief, he had yet to appear again. On the other hand, Li Ying, who had turned from a female corpse whose soul had yet to leave her body into a ghost raised by the ghost-raising sect's elder, appeared in front of me again. Why did it happen? Li Ying had come out from the stone door, but where was the Red Shadow? Also, who was this elder Liang? Was he the one who had arranged the 28 fiend Yellow Springs formation? Many thoughts emerged in my head. However, before I could ask, Li Ying's ghost brought a gust of cold wind and stormed toward me. When she was in front of me, I reacted and summoned my square sky fan. After the wild grass painting appeared, I managed to block Li Ying's attack and trapped her next to the grave. I had a chance to take a breather. I hurried to retreat far away. I suppressed all my doubts and focused on dealing with Elder Liang in front of me. Before I could do anything, I felt the Tao energy in my body was draining rapidly. Although it wasn't as bad as when I faced the Jing ghost a few days ago, it wasn't much worse. The ghost of Li Ying in front of me had the power of a ghost king. The last time I faced the Jing ghost, Tong Tong and I had to use all of our strength to win. This time, Tong Tong was sleeping in the jade bracelet. I was the only one left. What should I do? As more and more Tao energy was draining from my body, I had no choice but to absorb the dragon energy from the jade bracelet. Then, I started to make hand seals. During the past 2 weeks, besides cultivating Tao energy, I had been studying hand seals every day. After the battle with the Jing ghost, the first thing I learned was the Golden Light Seal of the Golden Light Divine Spell. 10 days was barely enough for me to learn the Golden Light Seal, but I was unable to unleash its full power. However, I had no other choice. Although the Square Sky fan could block Li Ying, it consumed too much chi of the way. At most, it could only delay my failure. Although the Golden Light Seal was a protective hand seal, the golden light was formed by the yang chi of heaven and earth. Hidden within it was an attack, especially against ghosts and spirits. I didn't dare to let the Square Sky fan consume more of my Tao energy. When the Golden Light Seal was about to form, I quickly put the Square Sky fan away. At the same time, Li Ying stopped circling the grave. His cold eyes gazed at me. Then he walked toward me. Elder Liang clearly saw my current predicament. The corners of his mouth rose into a sneer. He said to me in a sinister voice, "I didn't think that you would have such a powerful magic tool. However, what use is there if you don't have enough Tao Qi? Junior, wait for your death." Then, he chanted a strange incantation. Instantly, Li Ying's speed increased, and he dashed toward me. I didn't have a chance to speak. The golden light seal in my hand formed the last remnant image. Then, an intense golden light appeared around me, completely enveloping my body. At this moment, Li Ying was right next to me. When he bumped into the golden light, he immediately retreated. His hands that had come into contact with the golden light were scorched and emitting black smoke. He let out a painful groan. Elder Liang didn't seem to recognize the golden light seal. The resentment on his face intensified. He opened his mouth and roared, urging Li Ying to attack me again. President Su's eyes widened. He couldn't help but exclaim, "This is the Golden Light Divine Spell. How do you know how to use it?" I didn't care about his shock. When the Golden Light Seal blocked Li Ying's attack, My hand immediately formed the earth overturning seal that I had learned earlier. Soon, a light seal that contained an enormous amount of Tao energy appeared on my fingertips. Before Li Ying could pounce at me again, I threw it at her. The earth overturning seal rose in the air. Its body expanded, turning into a small mountain that pressed down on her. According to the records of the death scripture, the earth overturning seal wasn't a very strong hand seal. It was far inferior to the golden light seal. However, it was simple and could restrain ghosts. At that moment, with the support of the abundant Tao energy in my body, its momentum was extremely great. Just as the earth overturning seal was about to smash into Li Ying's body, Elder Liang clearly understood the severity of the attack. He hurriedly chanted an incantation again. Following his voice, Li Ying reached out to touch his body and suddenly took out a 2-inch long ribbon. In the world of metaphysics, humans had magic tools and ghosts also had ghost tools. However, in the orthodox Taoist sects of the Central Plains, there were very few who refined ghosts, and ghost tools were even rarer. This was the first time I'd seen a ghost tool, and I didn't know its use. But soon, I saw the power of a ghost tool. The ribbon in Li Ying's hand rose, and it grew longer, coiling around the earth overturning seal. Instantly, the earth overturning seal's speed was greatly reduced, and it was covered with a thick layer of dark energy. The earth overturning seal had a natural restraining effect on Yin energy. The Yin energy on it quickly dispersed, but more Yin energy flowed along the ribbon and wrapped around the earth overturning seal. Li Ying's power was much higher than mine, and he had much more Yin energy than I did. In just a few seconds, the power of the earth overturning seal had been reduced by half. Then, Li Ying's hand shook. Under the effect of the ribbon, the earth overturning seal shook violently. It cut off its connection with me and turned into a wisp of Tao energy, vanishing into thin air. Back then, the well ghost had been severely injured by the earth overturning seal, and Li Ying's power was slightly weaker than the well ghost's. I thought that she wouldn't have a good time, but after she took out the ghost tool, she easily dealt with the earth overturning seal. Elder Liang laughed fiendishly. Haha, kid, let's see what else you can do. I had used the square sky fan, the golden light seal, and the earth overturning seal. Although I still had Tao energy, I didn't know what to do. I rubbed my body and took out the champion seal that I had gotten during the dragon seizing tournament. The people from the Metaphysics Society had told me that the champion seal had the power of a heavenly master's attack. I had always kept it with me, and I wouldn't use it unless I was in a desperate situation. But today, facing the sudden appearance of Elder Liang and Li Ying's soul, I seemed to have no other choice. While I was still thinking, Li Ying had arrived in front of me. This time, she didn't use her hand to touch the golden light seal. Instead, she raised the silk ribbon in her hand. Her Yin energy twirled around it, and the ribbon became taut. Then, she stabbed my golden light seal. Under the effect of her Yin energy, the ribbon spun like a drill. The golden light seal was made of Yang energy. As the ribbon spun, the Yin energy continuously melted. However, it couldn't resist Li Ying's massive amount of Yin energy. As soon as the Yin energy melted, more Yin energy flowed through the ribbon. Soon after, Li Ying used the ghost light seal to drill a big hole in the thick golden light seal. I gritted my teeth and gathered the remaining Tao energy in my body. I continued to use the golden light seal to mend the places that Li Ying's Yin energy had corroded. However, my healing speed wasn't as fast as hers. Moreover, the Tao energy in my body was running out, and my dragon energy couldn't keep up. Feeling helpless, I had to use the champion seal. I lifted my head to look at President Su, and a malicious thought popped up in my head. A champion seal in exchange for Elder Liang's life was too much. If I had to use President Su's life, it would make sense. He had tried to harm me twice, so I could only do the same. At this moment, the golden light seal had become extremely dim. Li Ying's ghost light seal was only a few centimeters away from the tip of my brush. I didn't dare to wait any longer. I held the champion seal and was ready to risk my life. However, at this moment, President Su suddenly approached me from a distance. He shouted, "Elder Liang, The outcome of the battle has been decided. Zhou Yi is a member of our metaphysics society. You can stop now. Hearing his words, I was dumbfounded. Elder Liang was also dumbfounded. He looked at President Su and asked in disbelief, "If it's a life-and-death duel, why do you want me to stop? I told you that I would take this kid's 3 souls and refine him into a ghost cultivator." President Su seemed to have completely changed at this moment. He said without hesitation, "Don't forget that you are in my Shenzhen branch. If you don't stop now, I will activate the Metaphysics Society's protection formation. You can try and see if you can kill Zhou Yi first, or if I can kill you first." Elder Liang shut his mouth. His eyes seemed to be spewing fire as he stared at President Su for a long time. Then, he roared angrily. At this moment, Li Ying, who had completely shattered my golden light barrier, suddenly stopped his actions. He turned around and returned to Elder Liang's side without hesitation. He turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the bowl-shaped magic tool in his hand. A life and death duel had mysteriously ended just like that. Elder Liang was clearly unwilling, but he didn't look at me. Instead, he looked at President Su and said with a face full of resentment, "Su Lin, I need an explanation from you." President Su didn't care about him at all. Instead, he turned around and asked me, "Zhou Yi, are you injured? If you are, you can recuperate in the Metaphysics Society for a few days. No one will dare to touch you here." Looking at his sincere expression, I really didn't understand his actions. I could only guess that he knew that I was going to use the chief seal, so he saved me and wanted to form a good relationship with me. However, this was obviously illogical. If he wanted to form a good relationship, he wouldn't have agreed to Elder Liang's life and death duel. Moreover, if he was afraid of my chief seal, he could have avoided me. At that time, even if I used the chief seal, I would only be able to kill Elder Liang. I wouldn't be able to hurt him at all. Before I could say anything, Elder Liang probably knew that he wouldn't have a chance to cause trouble for me today. He snorted coldly and left the Metaphysics Society without saying anything. After he left, President Su had a smile on his face. He seemed to want to say something to me, but at that moment, Yang Kaichun rushed in. After seeing me, he let out a long breath and said while panting, "Fortunately, I made it in time. It's good that you're fine." I was surprised. What did he mean by that? After asking Yang Kai-chun, he told me that after President Su had agreed to the life-and-death duel, he immediately called Zhang Wenfei when he saw that the situation wasn't good. Then, Zhang Wenfei called his senior brother and asked him to contact the headquarters. Then, he contacted President Su through the headquarters to pressure him. He was afraid that he wouldn't have enough time, but he saved my life in the end. I finally understood why President Su's attitude had changed so much. He was pressured by the headquarters. I thought that he had changed and turned over a new leaf. I sneered and turned around. As I was about to question President Su, I realized that he had already left. That old fox. One day I'll deal with him. After this matter was over, I didn't want to stay in the Metaphysics Society any longer, so I hurried back to the hotel. After the Tao energy in my body had recovered, I sat on the chair and kept thinking about what had happened today. I wasn't afraid that Elder Liang would come to the hotel. I just wondered why Li Ying had appeared and why he had turned into a ghost and followed Elder Liang. I couldn't figure out the reason. I hated that I couldn't take the initiative to find Elder Liang and ask him. That night, I couldn't sleep. When I was about to study the geomancy formation on the Mount Tai seal, a bold idea popped up in my head. Elder Liang was still in Shenzhen. I had the chief seal, so I could use an attack as powerful as a heavenly master. It wouldn't be difficult to kill him. This man had used the Jing ghost to kill Lin Yuedong's parents and the others. He deserved to die. If that was the case, should I secretly find him and kill him to snatch the bowl-shaped magic tool that Li Ying was hiding in? If he snatched Li Ying over, wouldn't he be able to find out what had happened just by asking? Chapter 154. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I pondered for a bit and quickly made up my mind. Although the red shadow had sent me a message through the handkerchief, I still didn't know if I understood it correctly. Even if I understood it correctly, the snake spirit and the glorious knowledge realm weren't something I could achieve in a short amount of time. it would be much easier to start from Liang. As long as I understood what happened that year, I might be able to find the red shadow. Moreover, there were still the lives of Lin Yuedong's parents and the feng shui master. I couldn't let this elder Liang go. After making the decision, I immediately called Yang Kai-chin and Wang Yongjun and asked them to come to the hotel. Elder Liang was a person of status. If I wanted to kill him, it would be better if fewer people knew about it. However, I wasn't familiar with Shenzhen. Finding a person in such a big city was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was almost impossible. I could only rely on others to find someone. Soon, Yang Kai-chin and Wang Yongjun rushed to the hotel and asked me what happened. I didn't hide it and told them about it. Of course, Li Ying's matter involved too many things, so I didn't mention it. I only said that I wanted to take revenge for the 3 people that died in the Jing Ghost's hands. Killing people wasn't a small matter. After interacting with them for so many days, I'd already treated these 2 as friends. They had the choice to help me or not, so I couldn't just use them. After hearing my words, Wang Yongjun didn't say anything, but Yang Kaiken's expression changed. He quickly advised me, the ghost-raising sect is very powerful in Hong Kong and Nanyang. I've heard people say that the ghost-raising sect's Grand Supreme Elder had even raised a ghost immortal level spirit. He's also reached the Heaven Master realm. You can't do it now. Heaven Master? I hesitated, but quickly calmed down. I asked Yang Kai-chun, if the ghost-raising sect has a Heaven Master, then what about our Metaphysics Society? The few old presidents of the headquarters, including old President Li from our Shenzhen branch, were also in the Heaven Master realm, right? Yang Kai-chun nodded. Of course. It said that other than the few old presidents, the Metaphysics Society also has a few elders that were also in the Heaven Master realm. Their strength isn't something a small sect like the ghost-raising sect can compare to. But that Liang Kai-xiong is an elder of the ghost-raising sect after all, and he paused here, but I understood what he meant. I said with a smile, our positions are different, but I'm a young talent with 4 meridians, while Yi Piampian has 3 meridians. I was promoted to vice president in just a few years, so I shouldn't be inferior to Yi Piampian in the Metaphysics Association, right? Yang Kai-chun nodded thoughtfully. After a moment of silence, his face gradually turned cold. He gritted his teeth and said, I was the one who found the 3 corpses at that time. In that case, this matter is settled. I will immediately contact someone and ask for Liang Kai-xiong's whereabouts. After he expressed his opinion, Wang Yongjun immediately said with a smile, even if you are an otherworldly expert, you have to register your identity to stay in the hotel. I will ask a few friends, and it should not be difficult to find out the address. Wang Yongjun was worthy of being a businessman. From the beginning to the end, he didn't ask anything. After listening to my conversation with Yang Kai-chun, he made his own judgment and gave me a guarantee. Moreover, he looked calm with a smile on his face. This calmness was far from what the ferocious Yang Kai-chun could compare to. The business world was like a battlefield. Since Wang Yongjun was able to fight his way out in the business world, he must have experienced many shady things. After the agreement, the 2 of them made several calls, then sat in the room with me and waited. After around 10 minutes, Yang Kai-chun was the first to get a reply. It said that Liang Kai-xiong was staying in a 5-star manor hotel called Qilin Villa. After getting this information, Wang Yongjun immediately contacted the people in the hotel and found out Liang Kai-xiong's specific address. It was the 3rd room in the heaven area of the hotel. Not only that, Wang Yongjun quickly found me the layout of the hotel and pointed out the location of Liang Kai-xiong's room in detail. He had also stayed in this hotel before, so he gave me a general description of the layout of the room. After getting this information, I asked the 2 of them to leave first. Then, I sat in the room and slowly adjusted my Tao energy. At 1 o'clock in the evening, my body had already reached its peak condition. After simply packing my luggage, I rushed towards the Qilin Villa. Although I was confident that the Metaphysics Association would choose to protect me after I killed Liang Kai-xiong, there were always variables. I decided to go home immediately after I killed him. My home was in the north, which was far from Shenzhen, which was connected to Hong Kong. If the ghost-raising sect or Nanyang people appeared there, I would be able to find them immediately. I took a taxi to the Chilean villa. After I got off at the front gate, I didn't directly go inside. Instead, I quietly went to the back of the villa. In this era, things like surveillance cameras were very common. Although I was a cultivator, it was hard to avoid leaving traces if I went through the front gate. Moreover, according to the layout of the hotel that Wang Yongjun had given me, Liang Kaixion's heaven area was closer to the wall behind the hotel. It would be more convenient to enter from there. When I reached the wall behind the villa, I found a quiet place. I wasn't in a hurry to climb over the wall. Instead, I covered my entire body with Tao energy. Tao energy itself was a kind of aura. After covering my entire body, even if there were surveillance cameras here, they would only see a gray shadow. They wouldn't be able to see my appearance. Then I placed my hand on the wall and gently pushed it. My body jumped over the wall and landed inside the hotel. During the process of the dragon energy's baptism, not only did it open the acupoints and meridians, but it also improved the physique of a feng shui master. It was much better than an ordinary person. Jumping over the 2-meter-high wall wasn't a problem for me. After entering the hotel, I quickly looked around. After confirming that there was no one around, I followed the layout of the hotel and hurried to the heaven area. This manor-style hotel was different from the other hotels. It didn't have a high-rise building. Instead, it had rooms that were scattered like villas. This made things easier for me. Besides the 2 patrolling security guards, I didn't see anyone else. After carefully avoiding the security guards, I quickly arrived outside the 3rd room. Although the ghost-raising sect used ghosts to fight, their cultivation foundation was the same as the metaphysics world of our continent. They also increased their Tao energy. Liang Kaixion's Tao energy cultivation was much higher than mine. As long as I got close to his room, he would definitely notice me immediately. However, I had the dark green energy. As long as I covered my entire body with Tao energy, I wouldn't be able to see a trace of me. If I didn't have confidence in the dark green energy's concealment ability before, after the incident with the true dragon vein, I was completely sure that as long as I had the dark green energy, even a celestial master wouldn't be able to notice me, let alone someone in the glorious knowledge realm. There were definitely a lot of celestial masters in the Metaphysics Association. There were probably celestial masters stationed at the headquarters all year round. The true dragon vein was a huge matter. I didn't believe that only the cold-faced young man had checked me. There might have been a celestial master paying attention to me. It was just that with my cultivation, I wouldn't be able to notice them. After concealing my entire body's Tao energy, I felt my way to the door of the 3rd room and gently knocked on the door. Then I took out the champion's seal. If I couldn't sense the Tao energy outside the door, Liang Kaixiong would definitely think that I was an ordinary person and wouldn't be too guarded against me. At that time, I would use the champion's seal to launch a sneak attack. After knocking on the door, I waited for half a minute before I finally heard light footsteps coming from behind the door. My body tensed up to the extreme. I was prepared to launch a sneak attack the moment the door opened. However, when the door opened, I was dumbfounded. It wasn't Liang Kaixiong who came out, but a flirtatious woman in revealing clothes. After opening the door, she looked surprised when she saw me. With a soft and seductive voice, she asked, "Are you the new little brother?" I was stunned. Before I could reply, the woman said impatiently, "What is that slut Xiao Qi up to again?" Master Liang specifically asked her to come and serve with me. If Master Liang gets angry later, we won't be able to bear the consequences. Don't bother explaining to me. Hurry up and tell Xiao Qi to come. After saying that, she impatiently closed the door. Now I understood. Liang Kaixiong, the elder of the ghost-raising sect, had a youthful heart. It was the middle of the night, yet he was still playing tricks. I didn't use my Tao energy. I just extended my hand and pushed against the door. Before the young woman could react, I used my right hand to chop her neck. In an instant, the woman couldn't even make a sound. She directly fainted. I quickly walked forward and slowly placed the woman on the ground. Then, I walked into the room. Chapter 155. When I reached the 2nd floor, I heard a lazy voice before I entered the room. Why are you dawdling? Is Xiao Qi here? I recognized this voice. It was Liang Kaixiong, whom I had just fought against yesterday. When I reached the door, I didn't hesitate. The energy in my hand crazily surged into the chief's seal. The moment I activated the energy, Liang Kaixiong immediately recognized that something was wrong. He screamed, "Who's there?" The chief seal was a one-time use magic tool. It only needed a small amount of energy to activate it. When he said those 3 words, I had already activated all of the power of the chief seal. I directly stepped in and threw the seal in my hand into the air. My energy locked onto the naked Liang Kaixiong, who had just jumped up from the bed. After the chief seal was thrown into the air, it shone brightly. A white sword light suddenly flashed and slashed toward Liang Kaixiong as fast as lightning. As an elder of the ghost-raising sect at the Glory of Knowledge Realm, Liang Kaixiong wasn't easy to deal with. Even when I ambushed him, he still activated the soul tool he carried with him. A black light flashed, and 6 shadows appeared in front of Liang Kaixiong. They were like a black wall that tried to block the powerful attack of the chief seal. Seeing the 6 shadows, my face stiffened. I remembered the looting protection spell I had used before. Liang Kaixiong's 6 shadows should be the 6 ghost protection spell, which was derived from the looting protection spell. Although I had never seen it before, I knew it was Liang Kaixiong's life-saving technique from the thick yin energy of the 6 shadows. The yin energy of each shadow wasn't weaker than that of Li Ying's soul I had seen yesterday. They were even stronger, almost at the level of the Jing ghost. If I didn't have the chief seal and only relied on my own cultivation base, Liang Kaixiong could use the 6 ghost protection spell. Even if I fought for a whole night, I wouldn't be able to break one of the ghosts. Unfortunately, the chief's seal contained the Heavenly Master's attack. Even if these 6 ghosts were as strong as the Jing ghost, under the attack of the Heavenly Master, their souls would be destroyed. Soon, the huge white sword light swept past, and the 6 ghost shadows were directly cut into 2 at the waist like tofu. The black yin qi around them even collapsed and turned into a ball of yin qi, causing the surrounding yin qi to blow violently. Although it was very easy, after the sword light swept through the looting protective art, the light dissipated by more than half. After all, this so-called Heavenly Master Strike was not the real Heavenly Master Strike. After taking 6 yin souls that were comparable to Ghost King's, there was not much power left in it. Even so, the Celestial Master's strength wasn't something that Liang Kaixiong could contend against. Furthermore, he was currently completely naked. Other than the 6-ding protective technique, his other soul tools were placed on a rattan chair not far from his bed. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, he only had enough time to jump off the bed. He was still more than a meter away from the rattan chair. He simply did not have enough time to grab his soul tool. In a hurry, Liang Kaixiong could only condense all of his Dao Qi and form a protective technique. However, it was useless against the sword light that only had half of its energy left. Just like before, the white sword light directly swept through Liang Kaixiong's protective technique, destroying it completely. The rest of the sword light slashed at his body before vanishing in the air. At this moment, the chief's seal in my hand turned into a pile of gravel and fell to the ground. After the sword light had reached his body, Liang Kaixiong's movements halted. He stood still on the ground, bewildered. 2 seconds later, he screamed. His body slumped and slumped to the ground. A line of blood slowly appeared on his forehead, extending from the tip of the brush to his abdomen. After the bloody line appeared, a large amount of blood began to flow out. In an instant, Liang Kaixiong's face was covered in blood, but he had no time to wipe it off. He could only press his stomach with both hands. There was a crack on his stomach, and his intestines were already rolling out like a snake's flesh. Liang Kaixiong let out a choking sound. After panting for a while, he gritted his teeth and said to me with a weak voice, "Do you recognize this?" After hearing him say that, I noticed that he had taken out a wooden tablet the size of a poker card. While clutching his abdomen, he showed it to me. I looked at the small wooden tablet. There was a red pattern that looked like a ghost shadow. However, this ghost shadow was different from the others. On its forehead, there was a mark that looked like an yin and yang fish. I had never seen a ghost like this before. I didn't know why Liang Kaixiong had taken it out when he was on the verge of death. Liang Kaixiong looked at my puzzled face. He endured the pain in his body and said to me, "There's a Tao ghost sealed inside. It's our ghost raising sex treasure. I've already refined this Tao ghost tablet. The three souls are connected to it. If you kill me, you should think about the consequences. My ghost raising sect will hunt you down endlessly." When I heard him say Taoist ghost, my face changed. This thing was recorded in the death scripture. Tao ghosts were a type of ghost cultivators. They were ghosts that were formed after the three souls of cultivators were extracted. However, they were different from ordinary ghost cultivators. The conditions to form a Tao ghost were more stringent. They had to be a cultivator at the glorious consciousness realm or above. Moreover, when they died, their Tao energy wouldn't scatter and would fuse with the three souls. This kind of Tao ghost didn't have yin energy. Instead, it had Tao energy. However, because Tao energy and yin souls weren't compatible, this kind of Tao ghost couldn't be used in battle. Originally, it was useless. However, in ancient times, people discovered a special use. This use was to devour Tao ghosts that contained Tao energy. After a cultivator devoured them and fused with them for a long time, they could gradually absorb the Tao energy of the Tao ghost to increase their power. It sounded good, but there was a problem. After devouring the Tao ghost, the cultivator would form a Tao ghost seal. This seal would emit the Tao ghost's aura. After the devourer had devoured half of the Tao ghost's Tao energy, the seal would slowly dissipate. In short, the Tao ghost was like a rare elixir. However, later on, some people from the ghost-raising sect found another use for it. After sealing the Tao ghost, they would use their own souls to refine it. This way, the three souls would be connected to it. Once the cultivator died, the Tao ghost could be used to possess the killer. Due to the special nature of the Tao ghost, after it was possessed, it couldn't be dispersed. It could only be slowly devoured. However, during the devouring process, the Tao ghost seal would remain on the killer. Previously, the person who used the Tao ghost had left a part of the Tao ghost soul. When the time came, they could use that part of the Tao ghost soul to find the killer with the Tao ghost seal. In other words, as long as I killed Liang Kaixiong, the people from the ghost-raising sect would have the other part of the Tao ghost soul. No matter where I hid, the people from the ghost-raising sect would be able to find me immediately. Before I could say anything, Liang Kaixiong continued, "You should know that my father is the great elder of the ghost-raising sect, Liang Tianxin. The other part of the Tao ghost soul is with my father. If you kill me, my father will definitely show up. At that time, even the Metaphysics Association won't be able to protect you. Moreover, Hong Kong is so close to Shenzhen. You won't be able to escape in time." This news shocked me. This person was the son of the great elder of the ghost-raising sect. It was one thing for the Metaphysics Association to be stronger than the ghost-raising sect, but the relationship between a member and a son was completely different. If a heavenly master risked his life, then even the Metaphysics Association would be afraid. Moreover, just like he said, Shenzhen was too close to Hong Kong. After killing him, I could easily locate my location through the Tao ghost soul. Although there was a customs between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, it obviously couldn't stop a heavenly master. At that time, he would attack at night. I wouldn't even be able to ask for help from the Metaphysics Association. Before I could think it through, Liang Kaixiong said with difficulty, "What happened yesterday was my fault. As long as you don't kill me today and save me, we can write off all the grievances. What do you think? I swear on my Tao heart that I won't pursue this matter." Chapter 156. I stared at Liang Kaixiong and kept silent. I was struggling in my heart. Liang Kaixiong saw my hesitation and continued to persuade me. "It's fine if you don't believe me. You don't have to save me. You can leave this place, leave Shenzhen, and escape to another place. That way, even if I want to take revenge on you, I won't be able to find you. What do you think?" I didn't pay attention to him and just squinted my eyes. Countless thoughts ran through my mind. After 5 minutes, I didn't answer his question. Instead, I asked him, "Yesterday, when we had a life and death duel, how did you get the spirit you summoned?" Liang Kaixiong didn't expect that I would suddenly ask him this question. However, as he was eager to win, he didn't hesitate and answered, "My father gave it to me." Grand Elder Liang Tianxin? I frowned. From his age, Liang Kaixiong didn't fit the description of the person who had arranged the 28 Fiend Yellow Springs formation. His father, on the other hand, was at that age 30 years ago. I asked him about Li Ying. However, besides knowing that his father had given it to him, Liang Kaixiong didn't know anything else. After confirming that I couldn't get anything out of him, I stood up. I didn't attack Liang Kaixiong, but took out my phone. Although Liang Kaixiong was in great pain, he still exhaled deeply. His twisted face even squeezed out a smile. I guess he thought that I had agreed to his condition and was about to call an ambulance. Unfortunately, I didn't call the hospital. I called Wang Yongjun. The call went through quickly. Wang Yongjun asked me in a hurried tone, "Did everything go smoothly?" I didn't answer him. I just told him to prepare a driver and a car and wait for me outside the Qilin Villa at the fastest speed. Once the driver arrived, he would contact me. Wang Yongjun heard the seriousness in my voice, so he didn't ask anything else. Instead, he straightforwardly agreed. After making the call, I found a chair next to Liang Kaixiong and sat down. He had heard what I had said to Wang Yongjun. At this moment, he felt that something was wrong. He started to cry and beg me for mercy. However, I didn't pay attention to him and just sat there quietly without saying a word. Very quickly, Liang Kaixiong lost the strength to speak. He slumped against the side of the bed, using his last bit of strength to protect his chest. His face was filled with despair. Around a few minutes later, before Wang Yongjun's call came, someone knocked on the door. I was bewildered. At this moment, Liang Kaixiong seemed to see the hope of survival. He didn't even care about his intestines that were about to spill out of his stomach. He opened his mouth and was about to scream. I sat there without moving, but the Taoist energy in my body surged out and surrounded Liang Kaixiong. It easily drowned out his feeble cries for help. I calculated the time. If Wang Yongjun had sent someone as soon as he got the call, he should have arrived by now. I didn't mind the knocking on the door and continued to wait in silence. Just as I had expected, Wang Yongjun called me half a minute later. He told me that the chauffeur and the car were waiting in front of the hotel. The car was the same one he used to pick me up, and the chauffeur was the one I knew. Moreover, he told me that the driver has several 100,000 renminbi in cash. No matter what I wanted to do, I just needed to tell the driver. The driver had been his subordinate for many years, and he would listen to my arrangements. Wang Yongjun was indeed worthy of his experience in the business world. I didn't need to explain anything, and he seemed to know what I was going to do. After receiving the confirmation call, I didn't hesitate and walked to Liang Kaixiong. Ignoring his begging, I guided my Taoist energy and condensed it into the shape of a needle. Then, I sent it into his glabella. Instantly, Liang Kaixiong's body shook. His eyes opened wide, and he stopped breathing. He lay there stiffly, not moving an inch. Then his hand that had been covering his stomach slowly slid down. A small slit on his stomach became bigger and bigger. In the end, it turned into a big, open mouth. His intestines flowed out and spread out. At this moment, the Dao Go seal in his hand suddenly turned into a pile of ashes. Then a red aura with thick Taoist energy shot toward me. Instinctively, I used my Taoist energy to block it. However, just as Liang Kaixiong had said, my Taoist energy couldn't stop the Dao Ghost. The red aura directly hit my body and condensed on my left wrist, creating a pattern that was exactly the same as the one on the Dao Ghost seal. After that, even I could feel the thick Taoist energy on my wrist. I tried to use the dark green energy in my body to try to cover the aura. However, after trying, I realized that it was useless. The ghost's aura was really strange. After the dark green energy covered it, there was no reaction at all. The aura was still as thick as before. There was no change at all. I gritted my teeth and didn't care about that anymore. I walked to the rattan chair next to the bed and quickly took away Liang Kaixiong's bowl-shaped soul tool along with his clothes. Then I turned around and cleaned the pile of rubble that I had left when I used the boss's seal. Afterward, I rushed downstairs and left. At this moment, the woman I had just knocked unconscious was still at the door. The knocking was still going on outside. I hurried to open the door and saw another woman standing outside. I guessed it was Xiao Qi, the woman who had fainted earlier. Seeing this woman, I felt a little strange. It seemed that I had seen her somewhere before. However, in this critical situation, I didn't have time to think about these things. Without saying anything, I directly knocked the woman unconscious. Then, I closed the door and left. After returning the way I came, I circled to the entrance of the hotel. Sure enough, I saw Wang Yongjun's car. The driver was standing next to the car, looking into the hotel. I walked from the back and opened the car door. The driver heard the noise and turned around to see me. Without saying anything, he started the car and left the hotel. Looking at him, it was obvious that Wang Yongjun had told him to come here. After leaving the hotel for a long time, the driver asked me, "Mr. Zhou, where are we going?" I hesitated for a moment. Then I clenched my teeth and said, "First, get on the highway and drive north." Earlier, I'd already packed my things. I had brought all the valuable things with me. We could directly leave Shenzhen. However, I still didn't know where to go. With the ghost seal on my body, no matter how far I was, the people of the ghost-raising sect would find me. Moreover, Liang Kaixiong's father was at the Heavenly Master Realm. If he went crazy, it was hard to say if the metaphysical union could protect me. Especially after what had happened at the Young Phoenix gathering, it was hard for me to trust the metaphysical union. Moreover, I wasn't a person who was used to putting my safety in the hands of others. At this moment, facing the pressure of a heavenly master, I seemed to have no way out. I could only hope that the great elder of the ghost-raising sect wouldn't come to find me personally. I asked the driver to drive as fast as he could and put this matter aside for the time being. Then, I took out Liang Kaixiong's bowl-shaped soul tool. After using my Tao energy to communicate with it, I called out Li Ying's soul. When the people of the ghost-raising sect raised their souls, they would imprint their soul mark on them. However, after Liang Kaixiong's death, his soul mark had completely disappeared. Thus, it didn't take much effort for me to call out Li Ying's soul. After Li Ying got out of the car, I carefully looked at her for a long time to confirm that she was indeed the daughter of the old principal. I had heard of the old principal's story. It was impossible for Li Ying to have a twin sister. Thus, this soul was undoubtedly Li Ying. Chapter 157. After asking this question, I gazed at Li Ying, hoping to get a definite answer from her. However, to my disappointment, Ling only looked at me with her empty eyes. She didn't seem to want to answer. I frowned. The ghost-raising technique wasn't orthodox metaphysics, and I had never come into contact with it before. I couldn't be like Liang Kaixiong and order Ling around. If she didn't want to answer, there was nothing I could do. Although there was a soul-searching seal in the hand seal that could forcefully search the soul's memory, Li Ying's cultivation base was much higher than mine. If I used it rashly, I might suffer a backlash. After thinking for a while, I decided to escape to a safe place and think of a way to pry open Li Ying's mouth. If it didn't work, I would have to use the soul-searching seal, even if I had to risk the backlash. After spending so much effort and taking so many risks, I wouldn't be satisfied if I didn't find out how Li Ying got out of the underground palace. The driver that Wang Yongjun had sent was Wang Kuan. I heard that he was Wang Yongjun's distant nephew. Since he had been with Wang Yongjun before, he had seen me use Taoist techniques many times. That was why he wasn't afraid of Li Ying's soul. After I took Li Ying back, Wang Kuan asked me, "Mr. Zhou, we've already left Guangdong's territory. Should we head north?" I nodded. "We'll head north and stop when we reach Hubei. I'll make a plan then." I wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure from the Heavenly Master, and the Metaphysics Society wasn't reliable either. When I called Wang Yongjun, I thought of the only existence that I could rely on, the golden head at the Yellow Springs River. Previously, Yang Shilong, Feng Xing, and the others were all existences in the glory of consciousness realm. But facing that golden head, they didn't even dare to have any thoughts of fighting. So I was very sure that the golden head was at least in existence on par with a heavenly master. According to its attitude towards me, if I lured the Grand Supreme Elder of the ghost-raising sect there to attack me, the golden head would definitely help me. Moreover, today was the 14th day of the first month. As long as I could hold on until nightfall, the golden head would be lured out by the Yellow Springs River. Of course, this was only my last resort. After all, the golden head was too mysterious. If Liang Tianxin didn't come looking for me, I would stay at the Yellow Springs for a day before heading straight to the metaphysics headquarters to find a way to seek protection. After that, I rested in the car for a few hours. After a night of fighting, although I hadn't consumed much of my Tao energy, the constant tension had made me very tired. When I was woken up again, the sky was already bright. Wang Kun told me that we had reached the Hubei region. We stopped at a service station for breakfast and gas, then returned to the car. I closed my eyes and waited. After becoming a geomaster, the sixth sense of a geomaster far surpassed that of a regular person. They would be able to sense some things in advance. After sitting in the car for around 20 minutes, I gritted my teeth and asked Wang Kun to continue to Shenangjia. Although I didn't sense any specific aura, I had a bad feeling. Perhaps it was because Wang Kun felt the anxiety in my voice that he sped up the car. In the morning, we rushed to Shenangjia. Then, according to my directions, we went to the scenic area near the Yellow Springs River. We didn't stop until there were no more roads for cars. Then, I asked Wang Kun to take the money back to the scenic area and find a place to stay. After one day and one night, he would come back to find me. Wang Kun didn't ask why. He nodded and gave me a black briefcase. Mr. Wang asked me to give this to you. Then he left. After he left, I curiously opened the briefcase. There was a pistol inside, along with a few clips of bullets. I couldn't help but smile wryly. Wang Yongjun was really thoughtful. He had even brought this thing. However, a pistol wouldn't be of much use against a heavenly master. Moreover, I didn't know how to use it. After throwing the pistol into the car, I walked to the Yellow Springs River alone. It was already afternoon. I didn't have to hurry along the way. However, at dusk, when I was around 20 kilometers away from the Yellow Springs River, I felt a sense of danger. It seemed a strong aura had locked onto me and was crazily rushing toward me. This aura was strangely strong. In my memory, Yang Shilong and Yi Piampian weren't that strong. My heart sank. It was Liang Tianxin, the great elder at the angel realm, who had chased after me. After killing Liang Kaixiong, I had hurried on my way. It wasn't until the afternoon that I started to walk again. Liang Tianxin had taken action as soon as he got the news. From Hong Kong to the mainland, he had chased after me. His speed was really terrifying. I didn't dare to hesitate anymore. I gathered the Tao energy in my body and made a simple hand seal. Then, I ran along the small mountain path toward the Yellow Springs River. Along the way, the aura that had locked onto me became thicker and thicker. When I was around 2 kilometers away from the Yellow Springs River, I heard an old, resentful voice in my head. You killed my only son. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I will tear you to pieces. This voice came suddenly. It was just like how Tong Tong had communicated with me. It came directly from the bottom of my heart. Is this the supernatural power of a heavenly master? I gritted my teeth and tried my best to increase my speed. I didn't even have time to think. I ran as fast as I could toward the Yellow Springs River. Although the voice didn't say anything else after saying that, I knew that the speed of a heavenly master was much faster than mine. Under the guidance of the ghost seal, Liang Tianxin was getting closer and closer to me. As I hurried, my speed increased greatly. It took me only a few minutes to reach the Yellow Springs River for the next 2 kilometers. However, when I reached the shore, I didn't feel happy. Instead, I felt even gloomier. Because it was only 11 o'clock at night, under the bright moonlight, a large number of floating corpses had formed a line in the river, gradually drifting downwards. However, it would still take nearly an hour for the floating corpse bridge upstream to appear. According to my previous experience, the golden head would only appear after the floating corpse bridge appeared. And according to my current feeling, Liang Tianxin would appear in front of me in just 1 or 2 minutes, let alone an hour. In my previous calculations, even though the Taoist master's speed was fast, he would still be left behind by me. I was even worried that his speed would be too slow and the golden head would appear tonight would be a problem. But now, it seems that my understanding of the Taoist master's power is too shallow. I gritted my teeth and endured the fear in my heart. I slowly walked to the riverside and sat down. It was useless to do anything now. I could only wait patiently. Just as I had imagined, after I sat down, before I could even adjust my aura, a silvery white silhouette suddenly appeared on a small path that was shrouded in silver moonlight. Before I could see it clearly, the figure suddenly appeared in front of me like a bolt of lightning. Liang Tianxin. I looked at the wrinkled old man in front of me and asked bitterly. Liang Tianxin had the same resentment as when he'd sent me a voice transmission. There was a trace of sorrow on his aged face, and he looked at me with his lifeless eyes. He said coldly, "How can you, a junior, casually call me by my name? You killed my only son. I will make sure that your 3 souls will forever fall into the Yin ruins and suffer for 10,000 years. Give me your life." He was much more decisive than Liang Kaixiang. After saying that, he extended his hand to grab me. I didn't know why the great elder of the ghost-raising sect didn't use ghosts, but I knew that with his cultivation, I definitely wouldn't be able to live after this. At this critical moment, I stood still and shouted, "Did you decide Li Ying's and Lianbong's graves? Were you the one who set up the 28 evil Yellow Springs formation?" Chapter 158. Liang Tianxin's cold eyes were like 2 icicles in the cold winter, piercing my body. At the same time, a powerful aura surged from his body, making my ears ring like thunder. Even so, I felt relieved. Since Liang Tianxin had stopped, it proved that I had made the right bet. That year, the 28 Fiend Yellow Springs formation, the Big Tomb, the Underground Palace, the Red Shadow, and even the glass of wine I had drunk seemed to be connected by something invisible. Liang Tianxin was most likely the culprit. I didn't know why Liang Tianxin had set up that formation, but after dozens of years of planning, I knew that the Red Shadow was stronger than the Heavenly Master. Li Ying's corpse hadn't decayed. The skeleton's old principal, He Yuan Shan, had regrown his arm, and the fat man's father had come back to life. All of this indicated that this matter was perhaps even more important to Liang Tianxin than his only son. Just as I had expected, he stopped and coldly looked at me for half a minute. Then he said, "So, you wanted to kill my son because of Li Ying's ghost, right?" I shook my head, not only for Li Ying, but also for the 3 people who died in his hands. Liang Tianxin sighed and didn't say anything. Instead, his eyes gazed at the floating corpses in the Yellow Springs River. Did he find something? I didn't know, but I could only wait for his reaction and the appearance of the floating corpse bridge in the Yellow Springs River. After a few minutes, Liang Tianxin finally spoke. At this time, his voice had returned to its previous old voice. He faintly asked me, "So you must be Zhou Yi, right?" I was bewildered. He didn't know my name just now. How did he know it all of a sudden? After learning that Liang Kaixiang was dead, he immediately set out to chase after me. He shouldn't have had time to figure out what had happened. Before I could figure out, Liang Tianxin suddenly pulled out his right hand from his sleeve. He gently waved his hand, and several dark shadows appeared in front of him. I instinctively thought that he had summoned the ghosts to attack me. But when I took a closer look, my face changed dramatically. Because I know all of these spirits. Old He, the old Taoist priest with the steel sword, the other old man with the peachwood sword, He Yuan Shan, and even Lu Dei, who died under the old headmaster's hands in the underground palace, as well as everyone who went down into the underground palace that day. More than a dozen black shadows stood in front of Liang Tianxin, floating motionlessly with blank expressions on their faces. My head buzzed. Sure enough, it was Liang Tianxin. He killed everyone who entered the underground palace. However, there were still 2 people missing from this group, Fatty and I. Why didn't he look for us all these years? Liang Tianxin's eyes were still fixed on the floating corpses in the Yellow Springs River. He suddenly said with an indifferent expression, "There seems to be a true dragon vein hidden here." I was stunned. He was a heavenly master, so his senses towards dragon veins were definitely sharper than mine. Standing here, it wasn't a big deal for him to sense the aura of a true dragon vein. However, why didn't he mention old he and the others? Why did he suddenly mention this? I stood there and looked at the ghosts of old he and the others. I didn't know what to say. Liang Tianxin seemed to feel sorry for them. He sighed and said, "Unfortunately, after I reached the heavenly master realm, the true dragon vein was useless to me." Then he turned around and stared at me. His voice had regained its previous coldness. "Since Li Ying's grave was opened, I've been investigating that place for many years. I've found the coroner Lin Aching and his son, He Tai, He Yuan Shan, Chao Yang, Zhang Xianlin, and more than a dozen people. I've even found Li Anbang's remains and Li Ying's soul. I've used all kinds of methods to find them. However, no matter how I asked or searched their souls, I couldn't find a thing I wanted." At this moment, Liang Tianxin wasn't as mad as he had been when he'd sent me the voice transmission. However, his face scared me even more. He seemed to be questioning me or mumbling to himself. Then he said, "I tried my best to find the underground palace, but I couldn't find anything. I thought I was wrong. I thought that the clue I'd found that year was just an illusion, but I wasn't willing to give up. Although I couldn't kill the young man from Zhanshi's sect, I risked my life to search his soul. However, I didn't get any useful information, except for the underground palace and the vague female ghost in the red wedding dress, which gave me some hope. I didn't get any other valuable information." Then he suddenly smiled at me. His old, bony face looked exactly like a ghost's. However, when he looked at me, he smiled happily. I didn't get anything, but when I thought about it, I felt that something was wrong. That female ghost in the red wedding dress wasn't immortal. Why would she save those people? How could a group of muddle-headed juniors come out of that place alive? Over the past few years, I kept deducing what had happened back then. I even learned the Taoist techniques of the Zhanshi sect. Guess what happened in the end? His stare gave me goosebumps, but I couldn't understand what he meant. I could only look at him in a daze. Actually, Liang Tianxin didn't need my answer. After he finished talking, he chuckled. His old face was wrinkled like a withered chrysanthemum. He seemed to be extremely happy, and his eyes became gentle when he looked at me. In the end, I found that there was another person involved. This person was very important. Because of this person, those people could come out of that place alive. Only a fairy like the female ghost in the wedding dress was willing to save those mortals. But Zhou, did you know? No matter if I interrogated or searched their souls, you weren't in their memories. Liang Tianxin stared at me with his burning eyes. He said word by word. They remembered opening Li Ying's grave, going down to the underground palace, or coming back, but they didn't remember you. I didn't know if it was because of his eyes or because of his words, but I felt goosebumps. They didn't remember me? What did he mean? Liang Tianxin pointed at the ghosts of old he and the others in front of him and said, "All these years, in order to find you, this old man has made a list of all the people who have come into contact with these people, including everyone in your village, and investigated them one by one. In the end, I identified a few suspicious people. Your name was among them, but I quickly ruled it out. Now that I think about it, it's clear that you're the biggest suspect. But why did I rule you out?" He asked an inexplicable question, and then he gave an inexplicable answer. Maybe this is the rule. I just didn't expect that after everything reached a dead end, you would find Li Ying. It's fate. Liang Tianxin gently waved his right hand and collected all the souls of old he and the others. Then he said to me, "All right, follow me." Follow him? Although I didn't know what he meant, I could vaguely feel something that made me feel very uneasy. This kind of uneasiness was even greater than the danger I'd felt earlier. I stood up from the riverbank, but I didn't follow him. Instead, I took a step back. My feet were already at the edge of the riverbank, and I could jump into the river at any time. While Liang Tianxin was talking to me, I didn't look at the time, but I was calculating in my head. There was only 1 or 2 minutes left before the floating corpse bridge appeared. In the middle of the river, the floating corpses had slowed down, and there were faint bubbles rising from the water. As long as I could stall Yang Tianxin for a few more seconds, I could jump onto the floating corpse bridge. I don't know what you're looking for, but I won't go with you. I looked at Liang Tianxin and tried to maintain my composure. Liang Tianxin didn't mind. His eyes became gentle, and his wrinkled face revealed a smile. Since I found you, it's fate. You won't go with me? How could that be? While smiling, he extended his hand to me. Right at this moment, the bubbles in the yellow spring river surged, and a continuous stream of floating corpses rose from the bottom of the river. Time's up. I didn't hesitate anymore. My feet pushed against the riverbank, and I jumped into the river. After my body sank halfway into the water, I stepped on the floating corpses and slowly floated back up. Chapter 159. After the floating corpse bridge appeared, even I could feel the pressure. As a heavenly master, how could Liang Tianxin not feel it? He squinted his eyes and didn't care about me or the floating corpses. Instead, he stared at the water below the corpses. As expected of a heavenly master, he quickly found the golden head. However, I didn't have time to care about him. After stepping on the floating corpses, I ran toward the center of the river. According to my previous experience, after the floating corpse bridge appeared, the golden head would take a while to appear. Once it appeared, I would try to stay away from Liang Tianxin. That way, I would be safer. Who knew that after I ran a few steps and reached the center of the river, the floating corpses that had just appeared under my feet suddenly started to float up and down again. Even thicker bubbles surged out from the bottom of the river. I couldn't even stand properly. I didn't feel anxious. Instead, I became excited. The golden head, it must have felt my urgency and came out from the bottom of the river. I calmed down and stopped running. I slowly crouched down and grabbed the two floating corpses to maintain my balance. In my nervousness, I didn't control my aura. The two floating corpses I grabbed seemed to have absorbed my yang energy. They suddenly stood up and turned into two shadow corpses that pounced on me. They were just two shadow corpses, so they were nothing to me. I didn't even use my Tao energy. I just used my physical strength to push them back to the surface of the river. At this moment, the water in the river was boiling fiercely. Floating corpses kept rising from my body and floating in the air. When all the corpses flew up, the golden head would appear. However, when I finally relaxed, Liang Tianxin, who was standing on the riverbank, suddenly moved. I couldn't see his movements clearly, but in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of me. His right hand casually reached out and grabbed my collar. Then, without turning his head, he pulled me to the riverbank at full speed. Earlier, he must have been subdued by the power that the golden head had released. But now, after he realized how strong the golden head was, he decisively wanted to take me out of the river. Liang Tianxin's actions could be said to be decisive. However, just like how the golden head had appeared earlier today, it seemed to have realized something. The moment Liang Tianxin grabbed my collar, all the floating corpses soared into the sky. At the same time, a thick golden light shone from the bottom of the river, illuminating the middle of the river. Liang Tianxin's expression changed greatly. His speed skyrocketed again. I was almost brought to the shore in the blink of an eye. As we moved so fast, I could even feel the sound of the wind blowing past me, and my face felt a slight pain. But the moment Liang Tianxin stepped onto the shore, the rich golden light finally leaped out from the bottom of the river. It was like a small sun, instantly illuminating everything in front of it. Along with the complete appearance of the golden light was a thick shadow of a whip with a floating corpse attached to it. Using the same method as when he killed Feng Xing, the golden head and the hair attached to the corpse ruthlessly whipped toward Liang Tianxin. Liang Tianxin's speed was very fast, but compared to the golden head, he was a joke. Just as his feet touched the ground on the shore, the golden head was about to emerge. But by the time he stepped firmly on the ground, the thick shadow of the whip was already in front of his face. After all, he was at the Heaven Master realm. Under the threat of such extreme speed, Liang Tianxin still activated his Taoist qi and spat out a word. His voice was simple and unadorned, and I couldn't tell what it was. I could only tell from the tone that it seemed to be the word formation. This was a spell that one could barely grasp in the glory of knowledge realm. A simple one-word spell like this was a magical power unique to Heaven Masters. As he spoke, a pitch-black light screen suddenly appeared in front of him, and the Golden Head's whip fiercely lashed at it. The Heavenly Master level technique still couldn't block the Golden Head's attack. The pitch-black light screen was instantly shattered, but Liang Tianxin took advantage of this obstruction to escape the range of the whip shadows. He rolled to the side in an extremely disheveled manner. As he escaped, I also fell from midair. I thought that I would definitely fall into the river by the shore, but I was immediately wrapped up by the Golden Head's huge hair and flew back to the center of the river, where I sat on its huge head. The series of actions happened in a flash. My mind was even a little dazed, and I only reacted now. I heaved a sigh of relief with lingering fear. Liang Tianxin quickly stood up from the shore, but this time he didn't dare to take another step forward. He only stood there, looking at the Golden Head in a daze, his face full of disbelief. I took a few deep breaths, and after I'd stabilized my breathing, I propped myself up from the Golden Head with my hands and shouted at Liang Tianxin, "Elder Liang, no matter what you've been plotting all these years, you can't kill me now. You'd better leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, I might have to ask Xiao Jin to fight you again. Who knows what the outcome will be then?" I was indeed safe with Xiao Jin's appearance, but I wasn't sure how long Xiao Jin could stay on the river, so I could only threaten him. At the same time, my heart was filled with regret. How good would it be if Xiao Jin's attack had been like Feng Xing's and smashed this old man in half? However, I could only imagine such a scene. After all, Liang Tianxin had the cultivation of a Heaven Master and was many times stronger than Feng Xing. Liang Tianxin didn't respond to my words and stared at the Golden Head. After a long while, he spat out 2 words in an unusually stiff manner. "Tai Sui." "What?" After hearing his words, I was stunned. "Tai Sui? What is Tai Sui? A golden head?" I lowered my head to look at the dazzling golden light under my feet, and my face froze. What is Tai Sui? The Tai Sui in the metaphysics world wasn't some flesh-racer mushroom or a large slime fungus that the experts were talking about. Tai Sui was something that was born underground after the stars in the sky moved to a certain place. It was something that couldn't be described with words, and people could only vaguely call it chaos. That was why it was called Tai Sui. Tai Sui meant the chaotic star of the year. What was the star of the year? The star of the year was the 4U of the 7 polities and 4U. The 7 polities were the 7 luminaries. Feng Shui masters had to attract the power of the 7 luminaries into their bodies in order to be called knowledge. The fire obsidian in Fire God Temple was a meteorite from Mars, and it contained the power of fire. The star of the year, the 4U, was the corresponding star of the 7 polities. These 4 types of stars were respectively Luo Ho, Jidu, Violet Qi, and Moonroar. If the 7 luminaries were the foundation of metaphysics, then the 4U would be the biggest enemy of metaphysics. In Feng Shui, there was a saying that the time to kill one's master was the place to kill one's master. When the Luo Ho star appeared, the sun would be hidden, and there would be no light in the day. This was the time to kill one's master, and when the 4U was in the sky, a Feng Shui master would be punished by heaven if he used his Dao Qi recklessly. When the 4U appeared on the ground, this place would be the place to kill one's master. A Feng Shui master would be punished by heaven if he used his Dao Qi recklessly. The time to kill one's master and the place to kill one's master were the lessons learned by countless Feng Shui masters in ancient times. To put it simply, Luo Ho and Jidu were the stars in the sky during eclipses. They were invisible to the human eye and only appeared once every few years. Usually, the 7 luminaries ruled the sky, while the 4U stood in the dark. When the time was right, they would appear and cover the sky. Tai Sui was the incarnation of the 4U on Earth. The place where it appeared was filled with thick dragon energy, but there was no dragon vein here. Liang Tian thought. The golden head is the legendary Tai Sui? So the true dragon vein here is also fake? I didn't believe it at all. But then, I suddenly remembered the dark green bead that the golden head had given me. The dark green energy it had absorbed from the ink bead was just a tiny bit, but it was always effective against Taoist Qi. It seemed to be the natural enemy of Taoist Qi. The seven polities and for you, the bright star Tai Sui, Taoist Qi, and dark green energy. Chapter 160. If my guess was correct, the dark green energy was obviously the residual power of four, which was why it could restrain Taoist Qi so much. However, according to Feng Shui, the residual power of four and Taoist Qi were polar opposites, just like yin and yang. They couldn't coexist at all. So, why were the two energies in my body able to coexist? Moreover, in the dragon-seeking realm, the two energies could combine to form a greater power. It was incredible. Before I could figure out, Liang Tianxin finally made a move. He moved his eyes away from the golden head and looked up at me. The burning light in his eyes didn't diminish. Instead, it became more intense. He suddenly said, "Just now, when you were running toward this river with all your strength, there was a trace of dark energy in your ancient Taoist Qi. Was it the residual power of four from the Tai Sui?" I was silent for a while, but I nodded in the end. I had only cared about running for my life and had used all my strength. I didn't have time to hide it. He must have seen the dark green energy. After seeing my nod, the anger on Liang Tianxin's face seemed to diminish. He stood there and pondered for a while. Then he said, "The hatred of killing my only son is absolutely irreconcilable. However, if you agree to one condition of mine, I can let you go for now. Of course, this hatred can't be written off, but I will give you at least 2 years. What do you think?" His words were completely unexpected. Just like what he said, the hatred of killing my son was absolutely irreconcilable. What could it be that could make him willing to temporarily give up his hatred? I raised my head and looked at him for a long time. I didn't dare to believe him. Instead, I asked, "What condition? Tell me first." "It's very simple. In 2 years, I need you to accompany me to a place," Liang Tianxin said calmly. To a place? I knew it wouldn't be as simple as he said, but this condition was still very tempting to me. Although Xiao Jin was very strong, I wasn't sure how long he could stay on the water surface. Once he returned to the bottom of the river, I wouldn't even be qualified to negotiate with Liang Tianxin. Seemingly annoyed by my hesitation, Liang Tianxin continued, "I can tell you clearly that after you accompany me to that place, I will still kill you. However, it shouldn't be difficult to choose between dying now and dying 2 years later." He said it straightforwardly, but I was still unwilling. I pointed at the golden head and rebutted, "With it here, it's impossible for you to kill me. Why must I agree with you?" Liang Tianxin didn't mind my rebuttal. Instead, he chuckled and sighed. "Although the Tai Sui is powerful, it's something that can't be tolerated by heaven and earth. I guess there's something strange at the bottom of the river that has allowed it to barely survive until now. If I'm not wrong, the Tai Sui will return to the bottom of the river soon. Otherwise, its aura will spread far and wide. If those old farts know about it, they won't be as calm as I am, especially those from the Metaphysics Association. How could something passed down by our ancestors be so simple?" He sneered and looked at me. "You can rely on him now, but after tonight, you will fall into my hands." Why do you need to struggle? He didn't know what the first part of his words meant, but the second part was right. Xiao Jin would eventually return to the bottom of the river. After a moment of silence, I nodded and agreed to his conditions. After seeing my response, Liang Tianxin didn't talk to me anymore. He lowered his head to take one last look at the golden head. Then, with his back hunched, he turned around and slowly left. I heaved a sigh of relief when he completely disappeared. However, I still didn't dare to leave. I sat on Xiao Jin's back and slowly thought about everything that had happened today. The name of the Tai Sui was well known in the metaphysics world. However, I was afraid that no one could tell what the Tai Sui was. I didn't know it before either. That was why I didn't think about it when I saw Xiao Jin. I lowered my head to look at Xiao Jin. I still found it hard to accept. In the metaphysics world, the Tai Sui was synonymous with evil. Even the nether realm, which could capture souls and take lives, was just a place of reincarnation in the metaphysics world. It had nothing to do with righteousness or evil. However, everyone had the same understanding of the Tai Sui. When people couldn't find the cause of many disasters, they would blame it on one phrase: fate offends the Tai Sui. What did fate offends the Tai Sui mean? It basically meant that the Tai Sui shone on you today, or the Tai Sui remembered you. That's why you were destined to have bad luck. There was no reason and no cause and effect relationship. However, this was the common understanding of people. From this, we could see what kind of existence the Tai Sui was in the metaphysics world. What Liang Tianxin had said could be true. Once Xiao Jin's aura leaked out, he would be chased by many people. Although he was strong, it didn't matter how strong he was when he had to fight against the whole world. What worried me the most was the dark green power in my body. Of course, I didn't regret it. The dark green power had saved my life many times. If it wasn't for this power, I wouldn't have been able to have the innate talent of the top 4 meridians. Of course, I would disdain the actions of an ingrate who would complain after receiving benefits. However, after understanding the mysteries behind it, I would have to conceal this power no matter what. Unless my life was in danger, I definitely wouldn't reveal the slightest bit of it. Besides that, I also thought about the Fire God Temple. At this moment, I really regretted it. I shouldn't have revealed the true dragon vein to the Metaphysics Society. Now, Yipiampian and the others were all here, and the Underworld River was the only way to the Fire God Temple, so they must have noticed Xiao Jin a long time ago. Although those below the Divine Master Realm might not be able to recognize Xiao Jin, there was the real dragon vein, after all. Maybe someone in the Divine Master Realm would come here at any time. At that time, what should Xiao Jin do? When that time came, where would Xiao Jin go? Thinking about that, I lowered my head and patted Xiao Jin's head. This river isn't safe anymore. Xiao Jin, if you have any other place to go, then hide there. Do you understand? Xiao Jin's incomparably thick hair swayed around my body. I didn't know if he understood what I said. After that, I told him everything that I had analyzed. Then, I patted my head and asked him to send me to the shore. This time, he didn't sway his hair and quietly listened to me for a long time. Then, he swam in the water and sent me to the shore. After reaching the shore, I sensed my surroundings and didn't sense Liang Tianxin's aura. Then, I turned to Xiao Jin and said, "I'm going back. Remember what I said just now. You must move as soon as possible. Do you hear me?" Xiao Jin's large eyes stared at me. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a human-like smile. He looked silly. He didn't respond to my words and continued to smile. He even tried to move his head closer to the shore, just like last time. He wanted me to pat his head again. I sighed and sat down on the shore. I extended my hand and rubbed his big head as I explained the situation to him. Xiao Jin still had that silly appearance. However, this time he squinted his eyes. It seemed that he was enjoying my touch. However, he still didn't respond to my words. In desperation, I didn't mention this matter again. At this time, the moon had already disappeared into the horizon. The stars in the sky had also become dim. However, there was a faint ray of light coming from the eastern horizon, making the sky even brighter. I sighed. The sun was about to rise. No matter if it was Xiao Jin or me, we couldn't stay here any longer. I stood up from the shore and rubbed Xiao Jin's head for the last time. Then, I waved my hand at him, telling him to go back. Xiao Jin's body floated a little bit into the water. However, his big eyes still looked at me. His eyes seemed to be full of attachment. In the end, he moved closer and rubbed his head against my leg a few times. Then, he reluctantly returned to the center of the river. His body slowly sank. Looking at Xiao Jin's figure as he left, I suddenly felt that his big head and the countless corpses attached to his hair weren't as scary as before. Chapter 161. Since I had an agreement with Wang Kun, I didn't dare to stay for too long after leaving the Yellow Spring River. I hurried to return the way I had come. However, I was still very cautious on the way back. Although Liang Tianxin had an agreement with me, who knew if he was deceiving me or not? I couldn't trust him unconditionally. Fortunately, there were no more incidents along the way. Liang Tianxin really left just as he said he would. When I returned to the place where I had parted ways with Wang Kuan, it was noon. I waited in the car for a while. Wang Kuan arrived shortly after. When he saw me, he heaved a sigh of relief. "How are you doing?" I didn't mention the details. I just told him that everything was fine. He would take me to the bus stop at the scenic area. Then, he could go back to Shenzhen. It was almost the Lunar New Year. I had planned to go home, but Liang Kaixiong had dragged me out of my schedule. Now that everything was settled, I didn't need to return to Shenzhen. I decided to go home directly. However, after Wang Kuan heard my plan, he insisted on driving me home. Then, he would go back to Shenzhen. If he wanted to drive me home, it would be much more convenient than taking a taxi. However, after half a year of socialization, I didn't trust people, but I didn't want outsiders to interfere with my life. I didn't want my parents to get involved in these things either. In the end, I rejected him and insisted on going back alone. Wang Kuan reluctantly agreed. However, after driving me to the Shenangjia bus stop, Wang Kuan hesitantly asked me, "Brother Zhou, there's something I don't know if I should tell you or not." I was surprised. Then I smiled and said, "We've been through life and death together. Why can't you tell me? Tell me about it." Then, Wang Kuan told me that when he, Yang Kaichun, and Dai Nanzhou went to Lin Yuedong's house and encountered the well ghost, the others couldn't endure it. Only Dai Nanzhou had used the talisman I had given him to resist the well ghost's energy. In his hometown, there was a lot of talk about ghosts and gods. His family often went to temples and Taoist temples to ask for talismans and Buddhist talismans. However, those things were useless. That was why he wanted to ask me for a talisman so that his family could carry it with them. Then, he embarrassedly took out a stack of money. "I don't care how much it is. If I don't have enough money, I'll give you more later." Wang Kuan was Wang Yongjun's distant nephew. Although he was usually Wang Yongjun's driver, with such an uncle taking care of him, he naturally did not lack money. I thought it was something serious. After listening to him, I didn't say anything and gave him the fierce yang talismans I had. When I was in the dragon-seeking realm, I didn't have any decent magic tools. I had prepared a lot of these commonly used fierce yang talismans. Now that I had reached the pressure point realm, fierce yang talismans were no longer of much use to me. Since he wanted them, I might as well just give them to him. When Wang Kuan saw me shove a bunch of talismans over, his face turned pale with fright. He quickly waved his hand at me and said, "You can't do that. That's too much. I just need one." I smiled and said, "Didn't you say you wanted to buy it? Why are you complaining that it's too much? Just take it when I tell you to." Wang Kuan didn't dare to take it no matter what. He pulled a long face and said, "But there are so many of them. How can I afford it?" This fellow usually looked capable and experienced, but at this moment, he looked sincere and cute. I shoved the talismans into his hands and waved my hand. "I'm not selling these to you. It's almost the New Year. I left in a hurry, so I didn't prepare any New Year gifts. You should take these talismans back and give some to Chief Wang and Dai Nanzhou. Then, keep 2 for yourself. Consider it my New Year's gift to everyone." After listening to me, Wang Kuan finally accepted the talismans. However, he still insisted on shoving the money in his hands to me. He said confidently, "The temples and Taoist temples where I come from have a rule. When you ask for talismans, you must give some money to show your sincerity. Otherwise, even if you get the talismans, they won't be of much use when you take them back." I didn't know if I should cry or laugh. In today's society, monks and Taoist priests would do anything to earn more money. It didn't matter if they were sincere or not. When they met ghosts and monsters, they wouldn't talk about idealism. However, Wang Kuan insisted on giving me the money. I had no choice but to accept it. The cost of making these talismans wasn't low, so I just charged him for the cost. After seeing me accept the money, Wang Kuan finally beamed with joy. After hearing me say that it was best to keep the talismans in a jade box, he immediately ran to a jade shop near the train station and bought a jade box. After carefully putting the talismans in the box, he put the box into his clothes. From time to time, he would touch it, afraid that he would lose it. Even after Wang Kuan left, I still had a clear memory of how careful he was. However, after thinking about it, these talismans were slightly outdated to me. But to ordinary people, these talismans were more precious than money. They could save people at critical moments. It was especially true for people like Wang Kuan, who had seen ghosts and monsters before. He couldn't be too careful. According to Wang Kuan's behavior, if I went to Shenzhen to open a shop that specialized in selling talismans, the business would be booming. However, this thought disappeared in a flash. Although the path of cultivation was expensive, with the annual salary that Wang Yongjun had given me, I could support it. Moreover, I didn't have time to manage the shop. If I really opened it, I would have to work for a long time. The time it would be closed would be much longer than the time it was open. With this thought, I threw this thought to the side. On the way home, I chose to take the train. Although it was close to the end of the year, I chose to take the train to a scenic spot. There were very few people at the scenic spot. After I got on the train, I was the only one in the sleeper compartment. Coincidentally, I was happy to have some peace and quiet. I lay on the lower berth to catch up on some sleep. It was comfortable and carefree. However, the good times didn't last long. After the train had been on the road for more than 2 hours, we passed by a few big train stations. Very quickly, the sleeper compartment was filled with people. There were 3 layers of people going up and down, which made it hard for me to sleep. What was more unfortunate was that a beautiful woman with a plump body got on the compartment. Her seat seemed to be above mine. However, she threw her luggage on the bed and didn't have the intention to climb onto the bed. Instead, she sat on the bed next to me. This was like poking a hornet's nest. Within a few minutes, the men on the other beds all climbed down from their beds. Some were fast, some were slow. They laughed and sat on the lower berth, chatting with the plump beauty. In such a situation, I didn't know what to do. Just as I was about to use my Tao energy to seal my ears, I suddenly heard the woman talk about her occupation. She said that she worked as a wedding host. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but soon, she said that business wasn't good these days. Her wedding company didn't only accept business for weddings. In the recent half a year, they even accepted business for funerals and weddings. So, she was now the host of weddings and funerals. She often attended weddings in the morning and funerals in the afternoon. I guessed it was because of this occupation that the plump beauty had a cheerful personality. She chatted happily with the people around her. When the men heard her talking about this, they couldn't help but talk about funerals and ghosts. A group of people happily asked the beautiful woman if she was afraid when she hosted funerals. The woman waved her hand and said, "I'm not afraid. It's a big group of people. There's no reason to be afraid of a dead person. But let me tell you, ever since I hosted funerals, I've encountered some strange things." The group of people immediately became interested. They all asked her what strange things she had encountered. I smiled as I listened on the side. The job of presiding over weddings and funerals wasn't a new trend. This profession had existed for thousands of years. However, what was different from what this beautiful woman said was that in ancient times, this profession wasn't called presiding over a wedding, but rather, it was called receiving guests. Guest guide, as the name suggested, meant to inform the guests. In general, it was the same as hosting a wedding. During a wedding, there was a guest guide. During a funeral, there was also a guest guide for funerals. The job of a guest guide was the same as the fat man's father's job as a coroner. They were both low-class jobs. Although it was low-class, there were many rules in this profession. It wasn't something that people who didn't know the profession could casually make a living in. Moreover, from what the woman had said, she first did a job for a wedding and then a job for funerals. This kind of behavior was a big taboo in the profession of a guest guide. It was normal for something to happen. It would be strange if nothing happened. However, this woman's life was good. She had been doing this for half a year. Now, she could sit here and tell people stories. Chapter 162. The young woman's name was Fong Min. According to her, The strange thing happened to an old man with the surname Yuan. Old Master Yuan died, coincidentally, on his 70th birthday. Everything was normal at the funeral. Fangmin had learned some things since she entered this line of work. She directed her family members to help Old Master Yuan bathe and change his clothes, and then arranged for Old Master Yuan's 7-year-old grandson to wave a willow branch and a white paper banner to summon the spirit. Everything seemed to be in order, but when it was time for the relatives to help Old Master put on the shroud, Old Master Yuan's body was stiff, and he could not put on no matter how hard he tried. Funerals were also time-sensitive. Seeing that they couldn't make it in time, the family members all came to ask Fangmin what to do. But Fangmin didn't know any of this and couldn't say anything. In the end, the old man's eldest son was afraid of being late and embarrassing himself. So he knelt in front of the old man's bed, kowtowed a few times, and apologized to his father. Then, he went up and moved the old man's body, preparing to force the shroud on it. However, this move made things worse. The shroud was barely put on, but the old man's whole body was stiff in a sitting position. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't move it back. Now, even the coffin couldn't be put on. The family was completely panicked. They sat next to the body and stared at each other, not knowing what to do. In the end, it was the neighbor, an old man in his 80s, who gave the idea of asking the old man's eldest son to buy a vat and put the old man's body in it. It was called vat burial. At that time, the group of people thought that it was strange, but seeing a pair of guests waiting outside, they had no choice but to do it. The effect of the vat was unexpectedly good. After the body was put in, the front, back, left, and right fit. The family members were all overjoyed and quickly found something to seal the vat. However, when they were sealing the vat, the grandson, who was standing next to them holding the spirit summoning banner, suddenly said, "Why did Grandpa open his eyes?" This scared everyone half to death. They looked up and saw that the old man's body really opened his eyes. When people opened their eyes after death, they died with their eyes open. After everyone came to their senses, they looked at each other and didn't know what to do. A group of people came to ask Fangmin, but she hesitated for a long time. In the end, she could only come up with an idea to force the old man's eyes down. The eldest son followed his instructions and walked forward. However, even after pressing on the old man's eyes for a long time, he still couldn't close them. In the end, he gritted his teeth and simply found a piece of cloth to cover the old man's eyes. Then, he hurriedly sealed the mouth of the vat. A few filial sons carried the vat and rushed all the way to the cemetery. After the previous twists and turns, there was no longer a sad atmosphere at this time of the funeral. The process in the middle was reduced as much as possible. After hurriedly burying the old man, the family members finally let out a sigh of relief and returned home with the guests. On the way home, the grandson of the old master suddenly asked, "Why is my grandfather following us?" The group of people exploded again. They looked back for a long time, but found nothing. Old Master Yuan's eldest son slapped the back of his youngest grandson's head, telling him to shut up and stop talking nonsense. The grandson held his head and shut his mouth, feeling wronged. However, he kept looking back as if there was really something following them. When everyone returned home, Fangmin took the money and left in a hurry. Later, she heard that the family had been suffering from bad luck ever since the funeral, especially the eldest son. Half a month after the funeral, he fell while working at the construction site and became paralyzed in the lower half of his body. At that time, she believed that it was retribution because they didn't handle the funeral well. Even she was scared for a long time. However, she didn't find anything wrong, so she gradually relaxed. After listening to her story, the surrounding people all sighed in admiration. Some said that the child could open his heaven's eye and see ghosts, while others said that the eldest son was unfilial and deserved to suffer. I lay there and sighed. In this matter, the eldest son was obviously in the wrong, but Fangmin was the one who made the biggest mistake. As the host of the funeral, she was in charge of everything at the funeral. Not only did she have to manage the ceremony, but she also had to manage everything. Although the eldest son was unfilial, he had made the wrong choice in a hurry. If Fangmin had given him some advice, the tragedies that followed could have been avoided. First of all, Fong Min had made a mistake when she had arranged for the family to bathe and change clothes for the old man. She couldn't use ordinary water to wash the body because it contained too much yang energy, and the deceased belonged to the yin attribute. After the yang energy washed the body, it could easily stimulate the yin energy in the old man's body. That was why Old Master Yuan's body became stiff after his death. Since yang water couldn't be used, yin water was needed. The so-called yin water was the water that was bought from the netherworld with yin money. For example, burning incense, burning paper, and other methods of worship were used. That was yin water. Using yin water to wash the body could temporarily calm the yin energy in the deceased's body and soften the body. Moreover, part of the yin energy in the body could be released. As for the vase burial, it was even more ridiculous. It wasn't because other people didn't care about funerals, but because they didn't have this kind of awareness. They didn't know that their ancestors had passed down this kind of job to them. Fong Min didn't understand it either. She only considered this kind of job. She didn't know what kind of responsibility she had to shoulder in the culture she had inherited. With that thought, I got out of bed and sat on the edge of the bed. I told Fong Min my thoughts. After I finished, Fong Min was bewildered. After a long time, she asked me skeptically, "Are you telling the truth?" Before I could answer, a few men who were listening to the gossip burst out laughing. They said to Fong Min, "Don't listen to his nonsense. Who cares about yang water and yin water these days? Even my 5-year-old nephew knows that we should believe in science and not be superstitious. We're old. How can we believe this kind of made-up story?" After they said that, they looked at me with hostility. I was bewildered. Then, I understood that they considered me a competitor who wanted to pursue Fong Min. I gave a wry smile. I didn't want to argue with them. I wrote my phone number on a piece of paper and put it on the table. Then, I got up and went to the connecting compartment to smoke. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.